Welcome all the participants over here. Today is the third day. The Honorable Past President ICAI Nilesh Bikramsi, the today's keynote speaker K.S. Srinivasan ji, Hamid Khalid ji, and Amit. All the full packed personalities over here in this today's program. I'll just recap the entire 3 day. Today is the third day, and as you have seen that entire last 2 days was very good, and we got good participation and appreciation from you all people. And this program, a lot of people are asking how this program can be seen. This is going to be available on the ICAI TV, as well as we are going to host on the DLX platform of the ICAI. So the people who missed that, still sending query how they can access the TV and video. Don't worry, you will have the access of the ICAI TV, and as well as we'll put this on the digital learning hub of the ICAI. Yesterday we have the elaborative session on the PFMS. I think that was the lovely session which all professionals wanted to know about the PFMS. People generally know about how, not aware of that one, how the government is working on it, but it's yesterday was eye-catching. The session was there, and eye-opener thought process being issued by the ministry as well as the CGA, where they mentioned that they have completely digitalized their payment system. They have completely digitalized the Ministry of Housing and Urban Development Department, and they said that 100 smart cities already aligned with the PFMS, and now 300 another smart cities Amrit Yojana going to be covered up in by 2021 itself. And then after they are coming up with the 4,300 all municipal bodies and corporations, and that is the fantastic movement by the government going to take the lead on the digitalized part. And today is also a digitalization day, and we have a lot of faculties. And yesterday the Syam Dubey, who was the joint secretary and finance advisor to the Ministry of Urban Housing and Urban Development, he spoke all in detail about 15 to 20 minutes ex tempo, giving his details about the ministry, and it's covered up entirely on the PFMS systems and the payments, and emphasize the role of the chartered accountant, how they can convert it. And I'm saying again, it's going to be huge demand of the chartered accountant in the PFMS audit system and risk-based audit system. And yesterday also Hamid Khalid ji, currently he's present in this session, as well as he also said that PFS will help in the transparency and accountability, which is the one of the sustainable development goal. That is his statement of yesterday, and we'll talk more today also how the things are going to move forward. Somak Sekranji was there, and the domain expert from the Singapore. He expressed how the Singapore has come up in the public financial management system, what the domain he has adopted after the Singapore country has become independent in short span of time, how they came up. And a lot of Sanjeev Srivastava ji also, and a lot of people like Manoj Fadnis from the past president of Kappa, and deliver their thoughts on the various topics. Today being the third day, and we are going again on the virtual movement, and last 2 days was in the morning, now is the afternoon. I thankful to all today's speakers from the CNAGA, CGA, Digital India Corporation, and National E-Governance Division, which are here, and CIPFA UK, Khalidji, and Chairperson of the UK chapter, Ajay Kumarji, for giving their valuable experience and time for today's topic of discussion: use of digitalization technology in government for improving financial transparency and accountability. That is the key role going to be there. And in the second session, we're going to discuss what role can accounting standard play in government in promoting transparency. So entire all 3 days about the transparency, and we heard entire last 2 days, and definitely going to discuss more on the digitalization part. And we have excellent faculties, as well as those are having the domain expert. Now we have our own faculty, as well as see Nilesh Bikramsi ji, Hamid Khalid ji, Raghavan ji. So all people are there. Now We have Raghavanji. I just want to brief Srinivasanji is there. So he is a senior civil servant in government who is a member of Indian Audit Accounting Services since 1998. He has been he has a degree in economics and MBA. And he's obtained a CISA and CIA certification. He is presently a doctoral candidate in Indian Institute of Management, Trichy. So he is working in the CAG, and he has worked UTI mutual fund and a lot of CV things, and he's very vast experience. He published paper on the IT audit and finance in many international journals, and he's also a member of the ICAI committee, DAB, part of the committee member from the CAG, and knowing about the ICAI. So we have all the rich experience, and apart from them, we have Nilesh Pikamsi, our honorable past president of the ICAI. He is a senior partner in the Khimji Convergence company, and I'm very fortunate to work under him as a council colleague, and he gave me charge on the career counseling committee in his tenure. He gave me a lot of freedom and work, and which I have demonstrated the work. And he's a chartered accountant, diploma in DISA qualified. He's having business consultancy studies course on the BCA, and he is number of public sector companies as an independent director. He was the board of director in number of companies. Currently, he's having number of companies. Being a past president, he served in entire institute committee. And one of the successful year which he came out, GST he rolled out in his year, and the entire credit goes to him in the institute for rolling out the GST with the ICAI. That is his credit. So I welcome the Nilesh Vikamsiji for in this particular session. And then we have Amit Kumar. He is a management graduate from Management Development Institute, Gurgaon, working as senior consultant and NEGD, Digital India Corporation, having 17 years of experience in the Digital India. So I'll welcome him to this panel discussion on the digital part. And now we have the Khalid Hamid. He's also from UK CIE PFA. Hamid Khalid, a division director, has spent near about 30 years experience, and we had listened to him yesterday, and one of the prolific speaker which we have seen yesterday, and raising their concerns and guiding the members on the various risk audit part and technology part. And Hamid is recently became the international director of at the Chartered Institute of Public Finance and Public Finance and Accountancy, called the CIPFA, and aiming to support the increasing various kind of working which he is working. So I welcome him, Hamid Khalid, to this Institute third day program. And now we have all four speakers are there, and now request Srinivasanji for your address. Then we'll start having dialogue with each and everyone. We'll give the 10 minutes, 15 minutes each to display your thought process on the topic, and then we'll open up for the question answers. And we have some questions in hand, and most of the questions going to become on live also, where the Ajay Kumar ji going to take the lead on the in the question answer. So I request Srinivasanji for your delivery to the participants.
Thank you very much, Mr. Khandelwal. It's a real pleasure to be participating in this program. It's a tough assignment, being the first one after lunch, post-lunch session at 3 o'clock. Let's see how we can do justice to it. I'll start by sharing my screen. I have a few slides probably, which could keep you awake more than a voice could.
Yes.
Okay. Here we are. We are at a global virtual meet. That's another validation of how important digitization is to the world. If digitization is not there, then in the times of pandemic across the globe, people from UK, people from Singapore, and people from all over the place, we cannot be meeting each other. So that's, if we need any further validation, that's validation enough. And there, the topic today is how digitization helps government in doing a transformation. How can it strengthen governance? How can it strengthen public financial management? And how can it improve transparency? See, what are the building blocks of digital transformation? At least in India, what are the things which went into government going for a digital transformation? One thing at the outset I should clarify, that digital transformation is not computerization. There's a huge difference between computerization and a transformative initiative for digitization. What is that which makes that critical difference when digitization comes in? Digitization requires from the top, digitization requires a lot of change of the framework, the legal framework which enables transactions to take place. Every one of our acts, from a mere signature, what in digital world is called as a wet signature, where you sign with a pen, has to be converted into a digital signature. Then there should be authorities who should be authorized to give people a digital signature. And digital signature should be non-repudiable, and it should be available for people who want it. Then you need highways. I mean, it's not enough if you have cars. The cars need to get onto highways, and we know how Indian physical highways are. We should have better digital highways for digital traffic to flow through the country. Fortunately, India is well served by international internet links. See, nobody is, I mean, if you just put your thoughts on how do you think an idea from me, an image from me, or my voice carries across the seas and gets to various people. You have a whole system of internet backbone servers which send each packet to the right address without losing any of it. It gets reassembled and comes in as a voice into your computer or your mobile system. For that, you have undersea cables. India is well served with a lot of undersea cables. Chennai, the place from where I'm speaking from, has 3 international undersea cables coming in. One of the few places in the world with 3 cables. So these cables, India is in the center of the route which extends from west to east, from Japan to US, and it goes through Indian Ocean, it passes through India, it lands at few places in India. From there, the message or the voice is carried across. So you need cable, and you need cable inside the country. It's not enough for the cable to come in, for the voice to land from US. How do you carry it to Himalayas, to Kanyakumari? India had a huge program called BharatNet, which involves laying optical fiber all across the country. I'll tell you more about it when we come to that slide. Of course, all of you would have known about Aadhaar. It's probably one of the most brilliant innovations which were thought, and it was also a brilliant innovation as to how it is put together. It was put together by a public-private partnership by Mr. Nandan Nilekani, taking off from Infosys and coming into Government of India and working with a bunch of government people to do that. In fact, I had the pleasure of interviewing Mr. Nilekani for a TV program when Aadhaar was taking off, and the way he initiated and ran the program is brilliant. For a private sector person to come into government, negotiate the government bureaucracy and get a project of this order done, which is now across the political spectrum, across the people, it's something which has become ubiquitous for all of us. And on top of Aadhaar ran a lot of innovations. UPI, Unified Payment Interface, one of them. All of us use there's nobody without a digital wallet these days, whether it's Google Pay, Phone Pay, whatever it is, or even WhatsApp, which is coming in now. Unified Payment Interface, another brilliant innovation which stand on top of Aadhaar. Then you have various e-government initiatives which the government had come up with. Probably the other portion of India and DSS might be new to you. I'll talk about it in a little while. which will give you an idea of where is government going with digital transformation. It will show how government has been doing it in a very systematic fashion to make it transformative. It is not enough to just do it. Normally, computerization starts typically in the old era in 90s when we first got into computerization. It will start with general ledger, it will start with trial balance, it will start in the finance function, then move on to probably the HR function, and slowly it will get into CRM, and somebody would think of ERP, and then it will get extended. In a country, how do you do that? PFMS is your financial function, HRIMS, MIS is your HR function. How do you integrate the entire country from state, center, the districts, the third tier, the panchayats into one system? And how do you integrate all kinds of systems from what have you, from systems which work for transport, systems which work for crime detection, systems which work for finance, everything comes together in one standard. That is where India and DSS come in. And India and DSS had made it possible for various e-government initiatives to take off. With all this together, all these building blocks are essential for digital transformation. Now we'll examine each one, saying how did they contribute for digital transformation. And digital transformation itself is a different way of working. It is not. See, for example, I don't know how many of you, the old timers, might know the earlier problems that we have with booking a train ticket. And if you want to book a train ticket from, let's say, Chennai to Delhi, you've got to stand in a particular queue for a particular train. And if that train is not available, you've got to rejoin the queue in some other place for some other train. All these issues were sorted out. Now you don't even think. You book from your mobile, you book from your computer, you book through the voice network. It just transformed. So it was not mere computerizing that particular counter and that particular method of booking the train. And God forbid if you have to book. In fact, when I joined government, my training was in Mussoorie, and I had to go from Chennai. I had to change trains in Delhi and take another train. If you have to book, they'll send a telegram to the other station, and you might or might not get a seat in the other train. Now you don't know. You can book from any station to any station. There are a lot of innovations. People coming up with algorithms which help you book a ticket. If I cannot get a ticket from Chennai, they book a ticket from the neighboring station. So they ensure that all these services are available to the people. Digital India, it's just a listing of various things that government is doing. On top of that, we'll come back to it at the end of the session, which is an outcome of digitization. As I said, the first building block is the Information Technology Act. It gave a legal framework for the entire digital economy. It enabled e-commerce, it enabled MCA 21, it enabled a whole lot of things which a lot of you as chartered accountants would be familiar. It's based on a UN law, and not many countries have a law like India which covers the entire gamut of digital transactions. The amendments which made all kinds of codes, Indian Penal Code, the great IPC, was written in 1860. The Evidence Act dates back to 1872. The Bankers Book Evidence Act dates back to 1891. Reserve Bank itself is 1934. To bring 100-year-old, 150-year-old laws and make it compliant with the needs of a digital economy was a huge task, which was performed by Information Technology Act, which really enabled things to work. And then you had the new acts like payment and settlement systems for regulation and supervision of all kind of payment systems, from your digital wallets to electronic payments to all transfers that you do, IMPS and NEFT and what have you. All that is possible because of that. Then we are talking about digital network infrastructure, the infrastructure which is in terms of optical fiber network across the country, and now you have, all of us are using fiber to home internet networks, most of us, and this thing, bandwidth is just fantastic. In a house, that too during the times of pandemic, there might be your children doing online classes, you might be doing an office call online, and maybe a video call online, and there will be somebody watching a Netflix movie at the same time, and they're able to support the bandwidth for all that, which is unthinkable even a few years back. And India probably has the lowest cost of bandwidth in the world. It might be surprising to you that it was as recent about as few days back. In the last 3 months, the bandwidth consumed by rural India has overtaken the bandwidth consumed in urban India. Can you imagine that? Can you imagine, some old timers might know about 10, 15 years back, you will not get a landline connection at your home. You probably have to wait for 10 years and you'll have to go to a own your telephone scheme or something like that. And now you have mobile telephony and mobile data on top of that, and mobile data in rural India overtaking urban India. That means there's a huge transformation in the way services are consumed, which is also a huge opportunity for doing a lot of things on the digital space, which the government is preparing to do that. And I told you I'll talk about India and DSS. Digital India should move from building systems to building ecosystems. What do you mean by building systems to ecosystems? They don't serve one need. They facilitate multiple innovations to ride on that system. So that is why Digital India has moved quite far. In one sense, since we started late, we didn't have to convert legacy systems into modern systems. We started when the modern wave hit us, and we have really moved quite fast in relation to most other countries. In this, there are two things. India is an architecture at macro level. India is probably one of the few countries where there's a official, which is gazetted requirement, specifications for systems as to how systems have to be built, how enterprise architecture should look. That is at macro level. If somebody, for example, if Urban Development Ministry tomorrow decides to build a system for assessing the need for affordable housing, what kind of enterprise architecture that it should use, and how should they exchange data with each other, and what kind of taxonomy that they've got to use, it's all in India EA, which is the enterprise architecture, which has been given. Now, using that architecture, if they've got to provide a digital service, what kind of service standards and what kind of availability should that service be? How can I get into that portal and book my need for an affordable house in a particular area? That is also specified at a global level for the entire country by MeitY, Ministry of IT. That would ensure, what will that do? That will ensure that whatever you build are interoperable, two people can talk to each other and two people can understand each other. It will be integrated. You will not have islands which are sitting all over who will not speak to each other. It will make it absolutely seamless for data to travel from one system to another. It will also make it uniform so that people have a sufficiently higher standard when they come and enjoy this service. There are 8 reference models in DEA which look at everything from business, looking at business process re-engineering, to security, to architecture governance, to technology, to data, to application. And importantly, for chartered accountants and auditors like us, a performance reference model which defines how do I do outcome assessment and how do I audit a INDEA compliant IT system. What kind of IT audit tools and what kind of data would be available out of that. Even that is specified ab initio before you even think of building a system. Now, using that, there are various systems built. One of the most famous things is a trinity. As Indians, we are all aware of trinity. We all know that a trinity rules us. The famous Shiva, Vishnu, Brahma trinity is what rules us. The trinity which rules digital India is JAM. All of you know that is Jan Dhan Yojana, Aadhaar, and the mobile penetration, which has ensured that the digitization is a dream which has come true not only for the so-called India, it's a dream which has come true for even for Bharat. How did it happen? I'll show you the pace at which it happened. It's incredible. Jan Dhan Yojana, which means every person every Indian has access to a bank deposit. Every Indian can be served digitally. Financial inclusion can be done digitally. What does it mean for governance? You had the famous statement of Rajiv Gandhi made about 2-3 decades back that out of every rupee which government spends, only 25 paise or 27 paise reach the person. 63 paise is either leakages or the cost of administration. Now, it has just broken that paradigm. Now you can ensure all the 100 paise, maybe the expenditure in reaching it will be 1 or 2 paise, 98 paise, 99 paise going to the person and going to the person in a verifiable fashion. How did it happen? It happened primarily because you had inclusive banking. How did inclusive banking happen? Inclusive banking happened because you had an Aadhaar which gave 1 billion cards to all Indians, and you had mobile penetration which reached almost 1 billion telephones in the country, almost a ratio of 1:1. From the lowest penetration in landline telephony in India, we have reached the highest penetration of mobile telephony in the world, almost one of the highest. And there are states like the place I'm coming in, I'm staying, the ratio is 1.5:1. There's 1.5 telephones for every human being in a state, which means that all this inclusion is possible. If you look at this graph, you look at this 2015 and 2016, 49 years we had 14 new banks. In 1 year we opened up 21 new banks, payment banks. And in 2016 we said banks are available on tap. Whoever fulfills certain fit and proper guidelines, you'll get on tap banking licenses, but the banks have to be digital. It ushered in absolutely a new era of differentiated banking. It is banking for investment banking for the person who is starting an industry, who is starting a steel plant. It is also banking for reaching the subsidy to a poor Indian in a northeast state. I have worked in the northeast. I've seen how correspondent banking had made a huge difference in northeast. And now you see how Google Pay and all these things have made a huge difference to how we transact business. You have the famous ad of Amir Khan. You see, he says, does he have it? Everybody from a person selling a coconut to a roadside vegetable vendor, everybody has got some digital wallet which you can swipe show your phone and pay, which is a huge change. And when you're talking touchless in today's context of COVID, it's something which really helps you. It is not only in banking. Banking is only an example. All this was possible because of Aadhaar. What did Aadhaar do? Aadhaar gave you a digital identity. How did it give you a digital identity? It decided to do only one thing and do it very well. Now we have slightly bloated it by doing other things like address and all that. But the unique vision was it will give a identity. It will tell me I am Srinivasan. My Aadhaar number and me, if I verify one of my biometrics, will tell that I am Srinivasan and nothing else. Then Srinivasan can be, once he is digitally KYC'd, then you can use it for any other transaction that you want, and you can build any other application on top of that, like they've built UPI, they've built various other things to reach various other services. But all of us, Aadhaar number is probably what we automatically take it for everything. And Aadhaar is a system which can authenticate 100 million transactions per day in real time, which is something huge. Internationally, it has come in for huge praise. Countries like US took about 2 centuries to do a social security number. In India, did Aadhaar in about 3 years, 5 years, for more than 1 billion people. It's a huge, huge achievement. Of course, smartphones, I don't have to tell you. It's something every Amazon festival is all about phones, and you're selling about 25 million phones per quarter. Then comes India Stack. India Stack, probably Amit will take off on that, the people who are actually working on it. It's a lot of services which are built on this JAM Trinity in Jan Dhan Yojana, Aadhaar, and the mobile Trinity. Aadhaar authentication, KYC. After that, with all these things, DigiLocker. I don't know how many of you use DigiLocker. There's some I can tell you a personal experience. When about a month back, I got transferred from Delhi. I came to Chennai. In the course of my transfer, I lost my driving license. I was trying to tell my office I need a new. How do I do that? Do I file a police complaint? They told me, do you know the number of your driving license? I said, I must have entered it somewhere. I know the number. They said, go and download it from DigiLocker. And you don't need a physical. I've really got my driving license in my mobile now. I don't have a physical copy. And earlier, if you lose a driving license, first you got to register a FIR with the cops. For registering the FIR, now you just sit here and register, and after a month, the cop sends you an email saying your complaint registered, acknowledged, which you can give for any lost issue of any duplicate, your office ID, your various credit card, debit card, what have you. Earlier, you got to go there and you got to give a complaint. They'll ask you, do not the form, and after that, you'll have to go a few times to get that complaint, register that number for you to apply. All that has become digital based on Aadhaar, based on this jam stack. Digital locker, we already spoke about it. There is even a host of universities giving you a degree on digital locker, which you can use to apply. You don't have to do any authentication thereon. I know people staying abroad, I know how difficult it is for you to authenticate your degrees. You'll have to do it once in the place that you got it, then you got to go to the foreign ministry, then you got to take it to Indian embassy there, finally you got to notarize it and give it to your foreign employer. All that is gone. Now you have this thing coming in. Unified payment interface. It's one of the most brilliant innovations that you can talk of. Virtual payment address. Everybody has an address of Srinivasan at ICAI, what have you, or a number, and your mobile number. You can transfer money to each other without any friction. See, the point is the transfer of a business transaction is essential in exchange of considerations. I pay you something, I sell you a coconut, you pay me money. And if that money I take credit and put it in a bank, if there's banking charges, if there's time, cost, then that friction will eat up your margins, then you cannot survive in business. Then you cannot do differentiated banking or differentiated sales. But with UPI, with this kind of electronic banking, it has effectively taken the friction out of banking. It has taken the cost out of banking. It has allowed what is called as global plus local. It allows you to think globally, act locally, give a differentiated product to each one of us. You go to Amazon, you get a host of recommendations. Today, if I go, I'll probably get a recommendation on a mobile phone or something which will work with my digital locker, because they track my behavior and you can give it. And I pay through some electronic means. The cost is not there, the friction is not there. And this is used for every one of government subsidy payments. That is why the 27 paise has become 99 paise. Because every single, in fact, it'll probably put people like us, the government auditors, out of work soon if it's done properly, because we would not have anything to find if everything goes on properly. Exactly what is it? There are 4 different things which has made this possible. One is presenceless layer. I don't have to go show my face and then prove that I'm X or Y. I can do it by sending my biometrics electronically. Paperless layer, digital locker. The cop does not have to ask. People are scared. If I'm riding a two-wheeler, I'll not put my RC book in my two-wheeler. I cannot store it there, and I'll probably put a photocopy. Cop will say the photocopy is not valid. Bring me the original. All those problems are not there. I can show it in a digital locker. I can show my certificate in a digital locker. Cashless layer. You can transfer all kinds of. See, Dubey might have spoken to you yesterday. When PFMS transfers the subsidy, the DBT, direct benefit transfer, is done in the last mile, there are 2 bridges over which it goes. One bridge is the bridge where the Aadhaar seeded bank account is available with the agency making the transfer, whether it's Ministry of Rural Development doing an NREGA transfer or somebody else doing some other transfer. If that bridge does not go, there is another bridge which is Aadhaar based APB, Aadhaar payment bridge, which NCPI has, and NCPI just transfers that. Even if the Aadhaar is not seeded in your bank account, it still goes through. That is a cashless layer. Consent layer, you have not seen the whole of it as yet. Consent layer is going to be very big. It's coming up in a big way. Consent layer is something like your credit information bureaus, which collect there, and that is one of the applications. There's a health stack being built where if my health information is available in an Aadhaar seeded store somewhere, and tomorrow if I go to a doctor, all that I tell him the Aadhaar number, I give my consent that he can pull that data, and give it. And the consent layer is important because the consent layer does not get my identity and give it to him. It only communicates the consent. So the idea of disaggregated layers which mutually reinforce each other is a brilliant piece of architecture which was done to improve the security of operations of all these layers to work together to provide a service. That is what NDA and DSS did together. It defined how this should work, and now these innovations are in place. Now it's heaven. I mean, you can probably innovate to the heavens. You'll have hundreds of entrepreneurs, you'll have hundreds of unicorns coming up, which will use it in things in ways we can't even imagine. There's even now micro banking where people collect 1 rupee, 2 rupees, 3 rupees. Earlier, people used to go physically collect that money, go back and deposit, and then next day come and update your passbook. Now, if I'm collecting that, micro banking will turn into micro investments, and micro investments will lead to more investments in the stock market, more fund flow to companies. The sky is the limit for the things which can come in. I do not have to go too much into PFMS because you've done that. I'll take this opportunity to talk about another interesting piece of information. I don't know how many of you know about it. We all talk about Government of India being the My Bap. There is a document which is published by CAG. It's now available digitally, of course. One of the hugest documents. It used to take 2 years to prepare it. Called Finance and Appropriation Accounts. And there is a consolidated accounts for all the states of India and the Government of India. Why I'm mentioning it is now Government of India is 40%, states are 60% of the government contribution to GDP in India. GSDP has overtaken the national expenditure of the national government. Under these circumstances, PFMS is very good, but PFMS will only address 40% of the issue. Other 60% will have to be addressed by what is called IFMS, that is Integrated Financial Management System, which is again a word which World Bank used for all national systems. In India, the national system is called PFMS, the state systems are called IFMS, and in this IFMS, which is a management information system, it's one of the mission mode projects under e-governance division, and most of the states have done commendable work. Probably 70-80% of the states have done it. That will ride on top of voucher level computerization in India of the state governments was done in the early 90s, about 95 or so. It's 25 years old, and for 25 years, you've been having digital accounts at the state level where if I turn the camera a little, I can show there is a place where there are trucks coming in every month end from various corners of this Tamil Nadu state, which will disgorge vouchers, which will be entered into a computerized system, which will generate computerized accounts at object level, which is at the lowest possible level for the entire state, for about 25,000 drawing and disbursing officers. Now, with IFMS doing the front office being computerized, this is the back office, you have an end-to-end computerized system, which is like in an earlier avatar in a company, you will have computerization starting from the accounts wing. And now the transactions became computerized and you have end-to-end computerization, a ERP kind of a system. The government's decision support and management information systems will improve tremendously. That will improve your transparency and your ability to have accountability will improve dramatically with this being done 100%. So how does digital transformation lend itself to accountability? It does two major things. One, it completely reduces discretion. Earlier, we had discretion in most of the things because we have systems which are rule based. When you have a rule based system, there's always an interpretation which is coming in. We now are moving on to principle based systems. Whether we are talking about IFRS or we are talking about issue of a license. When you're going there and that is backed up by a digital system which will lend itself to decision support, the discretion at the hands of people will get narrower. When discretion goes, accountability increases, transparency increases. Automatically, transparency is the best sunlight to corruption and lack of accountability. Digital transformation has helped. The transformative effect is in ensuring that nobody has discretion. Either earlier the small time corruption of friction which happened because of somebody sitting on it and you will not have has been totally destroyed by all these digital systems. Now if you go to any one of those websites which are so well maintained by NEGD, NRGA, NREGA, in the most distant village of the country, in the most smallest granular work on deepening pond in place number X, you have a photograph, you have a list of people who work there, their Aadhaar numbers, how many days did they work, and what is the payment, when was it given, and it goes directly into their bank account. So the days of somebody standing there, gatekeeper in the middle, who takes a cut of it, is gone. That digital transformation has automatically led to people can check from whatever level I can pull up and see a photograph. I can decide to go there and audit that. The joint secretary in the ministry can look at it. The secretary in the state government can look at the data. So when you have that kind of transparency, that is a huge transformation. Transformation 2.0 is coming. In fact, that I wanted to save the best for the last. Sometime back, November last, we had a session, we had a conclave of accountants generals in India and in Delhi. Prime Minister inaugurated it. He was a keynote speaker. And Prime Minister wanted us to use technology to improve accountability in the country and asked us to come up with out-of-the-box solutions. After that, after the conclave, we have sent CAG under Article 150 of Indian Constitution. CAG of India has a responsibility to prescribe the form of accounts to Government of India, recommend it, and the President will act on his recommendation. We have recommended something called Digital Accountability and Transformation Act. This Data Act is very similar to, there's only one country which has it now, US has a Data Act. There, it is the responsibility of every agency which spends government money to give all the details of every penny spent in a website where it is available for download through automated means and use of analytics. So API, Application Programming Interface, is the most seamless method of pulling data, of extracting data to run analytics and all that. So India also makes it mandatory for everybody to have APIs. Now, under Data Act, there will be a separate portal where every rupee spent, whether it's spent by at the third tier by a municipality, whether it is spent by Government of India has given a grant, the grant is given by the state to a municipality spent it on an X road. So all the details of expenditure, including the contractor, including the amount which has been given to the contractor, should be available for digital download for everybody. It's like RTI to the power of N, which will enable this information to be available to citizens, which will enable transparency to come in, which will automatically improve their accountability. And government is actively considering that. We are looking at the American example where it was done and it's going on for the last 2 or 3 years. So my point is digital transformation will come when information is available, and information is available in a way that it can be processed. Now, the information which is available in the digital world is beyond the normal processing powers of non-IT led processes. You need IT led processes, you need analytics, you need big data, you need various other ways of processing it. You should make it available and easier for doing that. Once it is done, then it will be a huge transformation in the country. We have put every piece systematically, the law, the network, the required public infrastructure, the availability of APIs for private people to jump on the shoulders of this government infrastructure to offer innovative services, and these kind of laws which will promote transformation and transparency, which will really, when you're talking about a 5 billion economy, we might be a 5 billion economy, we would be number 2 or number 3, but we are actually, what we should be aiming for is an information rich economy. We are already there. We are generating information, and information which in digital transformation, one of the principles is information should be emitted. It should not be extracted. I don't have to go and grab the information. Information should automatically flow to me if I need it. That is the path that we have chosen. That is the path we are traveling. And I'm very happy that the ICAI has chosen digital transformation as one of the keynotes when they talk to government. Normally, you will associate digital transformation with either an IT company or fancy multinationals which are going digital. You will not associate digital transformation with government. But it is very surprising, but it's very heartening to note India, the government has taken a lead in digital transformation, and organizations like ICAI partnering government in this endeavor. It's brilliant. And I'm very happy to have got this opportunity to share my thoughts with you. And I would be happy to, react to any of your questions or thoughts, or I'll take it back with me if we need to work with that. Let me end by thanking ICAI again, and thank you very much. I'm looking forward to an interesting session here. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Srinivasanji. One of the best and simplest way of presentation about the technology in the government using for the transparency and accountability. Excellent. You have completed the entire details, saying that now the digitalization too, it's not being, carried out. I think when we started digitalization in 2015, within 5 years' time, the India has changed. Whether you already talk about Bharat Mission, Jan Dhan Yojana, KYC, DigiLockers, and UPI, and lots, things being implemented in this entire 5 years. And now you, by saying that, big data analytic in blockchain and other things, we really starting Digital India too. And this is towards for accountability and transparency for the nation, and that is why and most of the countries which could not do from the decades, we did it in last 5 years. So that is why we are truly becoming global in the true sense. So thank you for Srinivasanji for highlighting the excellent presentation on the digitalization in India, how it's leading toward the transparency and accountability. Because you rightly mentioned about the previous quote of the then Prime Minister of the Rajiv Gandhi. Now you rightly said, now become having a digitalization. Now every penny is accountable. Every penny is being seen. Now we are moving in that direction, and already 70% has been done. And one of the best which you highlighted, rather than PFMS, which is leads for 40%, now you are saying again another 60% is IFMS. So friends, watchers, chartered accountant, this is the next step for you, IFMS. We talked about PFMS. Now the Srinivasanji is talking about the IFMS. We'll have a separate session on IFMS. We'll learn more things on IFMS, how the Chartered Accountant of India can equipped with IFMS. So thank you very much. Now I will come forward to the Nilesh Vikamsiji, who's also a very well expert in the digitalization and knowing about the ICAI members, each and everything. So let's hear from the India landscape as a professional, being a professional and heading the ICAI. Let's listen the Nilesh Vikamsiji, then we'll move forward to the Hamid, then we'll talk to the Amit, and I also welcome my co-chairman CV Chatterjee to this. Though he's there, I could not able to recognize his presence in the morning because he switched off the camera. So we recognize the presence of the CV Chatterjee, co-chairman of this committee. So Nilesh Vikamsiji, sir.
Thank you very much, Dheeraj bhai. Dheeraj Khandelwal, the chairman of the Committee on Public and Government Financial Management of ICAI. Mr. CV Chitle, the vice chairman. Mr. Kesavan Srinivasan, the keynote speaker, the Director General of CNAG, Mr. Khalid Hamid, who's from SIPFA, England, Mr. Amit Kumar, Senior Consultant, Digital India Corporation, my co-panelists, Nabrata Khandelwal, the Secretary of the Committee, and all the listeners. It's indeed a privilege to be there on this very, august panel, which is discussing on the use of digitalization technologies in government for improving financial transparency and accountability. The topic, as was informed, and in fact, let me first compliment the committee, a fantastic, I would say, conglomeration of different institutes, CNAG, CGA, Ministry. We have got the CPA Australia, we have got Institute of Chartered Accountants England and Wales, we've got SIPFA from England, Digital India Corporation, Ministry. I think it's a rare combination of professionals in different, fields, to discuss on this particular topic. So thanks for this wonderful program. The topic allocated to me is, of course, and before I start, let me tell you, a fantastic foundation laid down by Mr. Kesavan Srinivasan as far as the whole digital initiatives of the government is concerned. So that will make, I think, all the panelists' tasks much lighter. The whole, I would say, foundation has been laid by him, so now we can build on the foundation laid by him. The topic allocated to me is the India's landscape as a professional vis-a-vis the digital, digitization of the government and the various government departments. And let me tell you, first of all, let me compliment the Indian government for being absolutely bold and courageous. I don't think any other government would take the initiatives which the Indian government has taken, the size of the country, the complexity of the country to digitize the country. So hats off to our government. So there is no two ways. And as was rightly pointed out, I'll go back 34 years, 1986, if my memory serves me right, was the year in which we had our old railway system, the reservation system ticketing digitized, if I can say so. It was not only computerization, as rightly pointed out, you could book anywhere, anywhere to anywhere from anywhere in India. So which was, sort of, in my view, the first phase which we saw live. Of course, not impacting us as much as professionals, but of course, making our lives easier. Second, as a professional, the thing which came to my mind is the digitalization in the revenue authorities. And I would say first thing, my compliments to the income tax department, right from the withholding tax, or as we call it, tax directed source in India, right from the filing of online returns, right from the refunds, and now we have got faceless assessment, faceless appeals, which all, I think the income tax journey started about maybe 10 to 12 years ago. We went through the trials, we went through the tribulations of the initial phase. But as professionals, I think being predominantly chartered accountants, cost accountants, company secretaries, I think we have been involved with this whole process. And I would say we have worked shoulder to shoulder as a true partner to the government in the digitization of, I would say, starting with the income tax, this thing. Lot of pain we also suffered. Initially, there were a lot of issues as far as the system being put in place. But I would like to speak a little bit more about GST because I was involved firsthand in the GST implementation when it happened on 1st of July 2017. And I would just like to narrate again a fantastic move for integrating the country from a federal and the state government perspective. I think the state subjects all brought into one law, different indirect taxes bringing into one platform. And that too completely technology based. I think GST is one law right from day one. The government was very clear that this has to be based on technology. It cannot be no manual interface. So each and everything, right from registrations, returns, refunds, etc., whatever you call it, is on digital on the portal and the platform only. So huge efforts made. Let me tell you. First, and I can just give you the journey which, as a professional, we saw. The first draft of the GST law came somewhere in, I think, the early January of 2017. The ICAI gave a lot of suggestions therein as a body. Then the second draft came, again further suggestions, and finally, in whatever manner, I think the way I believe this government works is there will always be issues, in implementation. So better to implement early and face the issues rather than wait for a perfect system to be done. So that's the model. The 1st July, the new law was implemented, 30th June night in the parliament, and huge challenges, I would say. When I say professional, here I don't only mean the practicing professional. I would say the professional who are involved in businesses, in industries, in companies, who have been doing a lot of back-end work, and plus the practicing professionals. All, putting a lot of efforts. Unfortunately, I would say in the GST, one of the key problems which we faced was the technology, I would say, challenges. And I can just share when we look at the cost of digital, implementation, I think one cost which is, I don't know whether the government is measuring or not, is the millions and millions of man-hours lost for the technology, I would say, initially not being. So I think somewhere one needs to do a proper, whenever we come out with something similar in future, a much more introspection that how do we see that the technology is, I would say, capable of serving the purpose which is there. Another observation which I have as a professional, what we face is whenever any new thing is coming up, the general thinking in the government is to, and rightly so, there's no doubt about it, make it an ideal system without having a background of what the past is and the current practices or the past practices, if I can say so. So GST is one, again, I think we should do a case study in GST where the government wanted a perfect, new ideal system, but our ground realities were different. And instead of a phase-wise implementation, I think we went for a big bang. Again, this is not a criticism. Let me tell you, I'm more as a proud Indian, I'm suggesting for a way forward from an introspection perspective that we need to look at from an introspection is, can we phase out certain things or which are the two, actions which have been done, which are better off, I think. We need to do all these case studies and for our posterity, like how we should be going about. So, and at that point of time, many of the people are very, very adamant in the government on certain things, but when finally the reality dawned on them, they had to give relaxations going forward. And I can tell you, in this whole endeavor, it was the professionals which have worked shoulder to shoulder with the government in implementing it. I can say they are like, two wheels of a vehicle, of a two-wheeler, or maybe two sides of the same vehicle, where say government is thinking of a law. The whole implementation execution is done by professionals. So I think that respect has to come from the government. Of late, I have seen is, for example, the number of suggestions, if I total up from January 17 to June 17, and even later, we used to give monthly suggestions based on the implementation issues we faced. Around 500 suggestions given and about 170, 180 accepted initially. Then later on, when the systems were not keeping pace, then all the other suggestions were accepted. And we as an institute, what we did, and I think most of the professionals, is when this new law was coming, when this digitization of the GST was happening, we sort of did, I would say, millions and millions of man-hours of training, not only for the members of CAs, for, I would say, the staff, for the industry, for the businesses, and even for the government officers. Because state government was in a different system, even central government. At that time, it was called the CBEC, Central Board of Excise and Customs. Now it is CBIC. So training to all the officers and all. And we literally, sort of slog to see that it is implemented in a good manner. So these are the two key things, the tax and the GST, where the professionals have worked, I would say, substantially with the government for an implementation of the digital, on the revenue side. Apart from that, I would say the government has come out with the e-marketplace, the land records are getting digitized, the subsidies are now directly going to the beneficiaries, as was mentioned, the DBT, the Jandan, the JAM Trinity, which sort of led to, and today what you're seeing, the funds directly going to the accounts of the beneficiaries. And that's the right way of doing things. And I think, again, a fantastic job done by the government. And just as a final point, since this is an ICAI program, just yesterday or day before, there was a news report which said that almost 40 lakh taxpayers have got 1.36 trillion rupees of refunds in this pandemic period. And that gives the impact of the digitization, how digitization has sort of helped deliver, I would say, irrespective of the physical movement being, constrained, restrained, the technology is allowing benefits to the, I would say, users, to beneficiaries directly. So I would say it's been a good thing, and I would wish that the government in future involves the professional at the, I would say, designing stage of the law or the digitization, as the case may be, rather than as a reaction. And when I say professionals, I would mean the professional bodies. And let me share with you whatever, see, in all professions, there could be some black sheep, but as a body, I can, I would not be wrong in saying that we give only the suggestions which we feel are in the interest of the nation. We would not give, there's a fantastic maker checkup, this thing in the institute. Mr. Srinivasan also is part of the digital accountancy and assurance and accountancy board, and he knows the type of debates which go on, suggestion coming up. There's a lot of debates which happen in the committee, and then only it is escalated out to the government or to the beneficiary. So there are reasonably good maker there. So we, as a body, ICAI would always give suggestion in the interest of the nation, being connected to the ground as professionals or being connected to the businesses. It is, I think, and plus what is required, I think that voice has to be considered at the drafting stage of the law or of digitization when new systems are coming up. That will reduce a lot of the pain which generally people face later on after the implementation. So I would only recommend that to whoever is present here. That is done, I think, will make the life of our citizens much better. And of course, huge opportunities now post digitization, whether the, as was rightly mentioned, since everything is, transparent and accountable, beneficial. So a lot of opportunities arising out of that, which we'll talk as we go further in the discussion. With this, thanks. This was the initial remarks which I wanted to give, and would be glad to, interact more after the other panelists have their say. Thank you very much once again.
Nilesh Vikramsiji, for your valuable input on the India perspective, as well as the suggestion, as well as on the professional, how the professional has adopted the technology, and we professional, compared with the GST, income tax, faceless assessment, and lots, whatever the, IFMS or PFMS going to come, and we're going to adopt, and will be partnering with the, government of India in taking this initiative. So we always been partnering with the government in various initiatives, and we going to continue in this same initiative, and the as a professional will take forward. Now it's time to to take up from global perspective. Hamid Khalid is here, and will take his view on the digitalization and in transparency and accountability, how the global world is doing, and what their thought on the India part. Let's hear it from the Hamid Khalid.
Thank you, and thank you to the esteemed panelists as well. And the comments and presentations so far have been so far-ranging that I don't know where to start, to be honest. There's been so many interesting insights and thoughts. A couple of things I would say about CNAG India is, in terms of the organisation, for those who don't know, all the audit officers are part of an organisation called ICAI, and the CNAG India is the lead on the working group on IT auditing. So they are the leadership role within the world of auditor officers, and they deservedly so, based on the presentation made by my esteemed colleague. I want to just give some perspective or comments. I mean, I think one comment made about, for a large country to have done this to the scale it has is amazing. You do find pockets of smaller environments and smaller jurisdictions, city-states and so forth. I've spent many years in the United Arab Emirates where they've done a lot of work in this regard. But the scalability of it here is something to behold. I mean, you talk about Europe and you talk about the countries who have really gone ahead, places like Estonia, which have digitalized everything, including all their elections and everything and all their information. I mean, but you're not talking about 1 billion people. And as rightfully was said, the US is really looking into this a lot. If I can just take a couple of concepts though and look at them from what we're looking at, because I think there's an evolution happening, no doubt. From 2007, with the advent of the iPhone, when we came, all Facebook, all of these things that have come into our consciousness that we take for granted now, how we interact virtually more than we interact in reality. So governments is catching up. But there are a number of things I think I just want to pose as ideas, which are debates and ideas and discussions we're having. And some of them were raised from within your context and in the context of what do modern day, what do modern day professionals have to do in this space? What's the point of us now? Because there was a comment about potential redundancy of the auditors, for an example. So let's break this down into a few different dimensions. First of all, some of the bigger ticket items, when we looked at the achievements of countries to get towards the Sustainable Development Goals, the idea is that by 2030, if we achieve the Sustainable Development Goals, the world will be a happy place, we'll have alleviated poverty, we'll be on top of climate change, all the big ticket items will be addressed. But there are three things governments really that we saw when we looked across all the world and looked at the preparedness of governments in assisting in that process. And the three things that really hit, one was the interoperability of systems and lack thereof to get the data, which I think we've heard about. The second one was the linkage between the ambition and the actual service delivery to the budget to make sure that the actual thing is costed and funded, because at the moment there's a thing called financing for development, and at the moment we know we're not going to achieve SDGs because there just isn't the money spent on the ideas that are needed to achieve those indicators and targets. So there's an element of linking budget to reality, to ambition. And then the third one was working together at different layers of government and different levels of government, because obviously you can get a congruence between the roles of the different levels of government. So those are the big ticket items. But in what was said, I just want to, I'm not trying to be controversial, but I'm just trying to stimulate thought. There are two things I would like to suggest where I think what's been achieved for me and what was very, very powerful was the idea that what is systematic and recurring because of transparency through processes which are predetermined and can be understood where there's no discretion is totally and utterly digitalizable, automatable, and you can have the transparency and you can eliminate the fraud and the waste and the corruption as long as, I'll talk about the algorithm in a minute, but as long as that process is done, and that's for administrative services. We've heard about taxation, we've heard about payments of grants, we've heard about all the things that I call administrative services as driving licenses. All of these things are administrative services, and they should be minimized and they should be efficient and they should be sorted out. Where I think the professionals come in is where we talk about the bigger values of life, where we talk about educating our children, treating our patients and providing that care, where I call those professional services. They need to be supported by the administrative services. You heard about the healthcare aspects, but there is a professional judgment and professional skepticism still required that we were trained to do in areas where judgments are required, where discretion is still needed because it's a profession. It's not an administrative process. And that's where I think there's a shift, and I still think the auditors will have a job for that reason. There's a shift from just looking at things that are systematic and recurring to things that are non-recurring, maybe new, and non-systematic where professional judgment is needed. And this is challenging the whole status quo of looking at entity-level audit and financial statements, for example. If we looked at real time at what's systematic and recurring, we don't need to aggregate that in the same way, I don't think. I think what we should be looking at is the real time policy decisions and whether those data sets are available and whether they're transparent at the outset. And I think that real time auditing is moving us away from assurance towards quality. And it's an interesting phenomenon. I don't know what the destination is, but it's something that I think we should be debating as accountants and we should be thinking about. In addition to that, and going back to the other aspects that were made, there are obviously infrastructure output with administration services, but the point of the contracting and the power between the multinationals and countries and governments. And you look at this with PPP, you look at this with other initiatives, who's got the advantage, who's got the skills. as accountants, we can help governments by partnering with them. So they, as I sometimes say, I don't need to commit any crime if I can legally rip you off. And this is kind of the idea that we need to be in the procurement process and helping in that partnering in that process, and that's again a professional aspect. It's a difficult area, but it's also where we need to learn to talk to lawyers, and we need to learn to talk to others as well. The other one is in decision support system for policy making. So the last area of government, I think, is policy and regulation. It's where you control what happens, but you don't do it. And in order for governments to do that well, it needs a decision support system, and it needs a mechanism which accountants are fundamental in, but accountants have to learn to talk to statisticians, they have to learn to talk to economists, and legal profession as well, in order that we have a coherent way of looking at policy. Because when a policy comes in, from what you're saying with the IT side, is that a policy for an administrative service, I get it, you want people to get the best experience. You've explained how you can buy a good, and you can have just the issue of identity theft obviously is one of the risks. But other than that, I think we have a very strong case here. But when it comes to social policy or environmental policy, or even now the concepts of starting in the UK, particularly strongly in other areas, of intergenerational fairness and all of these issues, these need to be embedded to ensure that there is an equity, an achievement of the right answer for government. Because you're going beyond alleviating poverty, and then you're going towards ensuring the best experience for citizens you can get as your role in government. And that's where the movement is. So this is where accountants stop having to produce information because that's been done. They have to be the interpreters and the analysers. And that's the difference. And because government exists because of market failure, or it exists because of a need for regulation, or whatever that thing is, it's a skill set that also needs to be adapted within the accounting profession to understand that it's not the profit motive here, but there are more sophisticated motives when it comes to indicators, performance indicators of these dimensions, and non-financial information data sets need to have the same. So one of the things that I always say about the 21st century, and I think you've achieved it in a lot, is I have 4 words that, for me, that describe the 21st century, and they're 2 sets of 2 words. One's managing information, and 2's integrated thinking. And these 2 expressions are where I think we really have to start thinking about how we come across to the government sector as a whole, and where the government, I'm almost starting to visualize, and I don't know what it looks like yet, but the idea, and I'd love to talk to my colleague from CNAG about this, the idea of an information balance sheet. Not just a financial one, where we actually look at it and say that's what we need to be looking at. Because we used to always say follow the money, but actually, if we follow the information, it's more powerful now. The most highly capitalized companies in the world are just out living on data. They've got more expensive than the oil companies now, the big tech companies. So this is just data, and governments had this data for millennia. And it's got a chance to really leverage off that, but there are obviously the privacy issues and everything else. I could go in about 10 other directions on this. There's just a couple of other things I want to raise, though, just to provoke the conversation. The change management has been so extreme, and it's been so amazing, and the way that people have adapted to technology and the way we see it is going on is amazing. But there is an element of trusting technology when technology itself can never be neutral. An algorithm can never be neutral. It has inbuilt concepts in it which you could argue have bias in them. Some of the examples of, recruitment practices through algorithms, they could eliminate certain groups. I think in New York they had the example of teachers being recruited and certain communities not being engaged. So we have to beware. It's not just a solution that's just doesn't need to be looked at. And then finally, the other thing was that I think that what I'm hearing is really, it's like I would be very proud as well if I was Indian. Definitely, it's a wonderful story yesterday and today, and I think that's the point. It's a movement away from ensuring the minimum's done and the stuff that needs to happen happens, to actually considering what do we want. And the accountants need to get into that conversation. And I think thought leadership and sessions like this, I think it's a good chance to take from this platform a sort of policy and a thought process that you may have in that regard. On those few words, I forgot to start my watch on my time, so I've no idea how much time I've spent. So I hope those are enough words for now, and we can hopefully have a little discussion.
Thank you, Hamid, for excellent, your thoughts. Your thoughts are very crystal clear, in having integrated thinking and the sustainable goals very nicely presented, so that the more transparency and accountability come to the government side. Now we have Amit Kumar from the government side, Digital India side. So let's hear from his view about the Digital India. So Amit Kumar ji.
Yeah. Hello, everyone, and thank you very much for including me in amongst such eminent panelists. And I feel privileged. And today, and I think Srinivasan sir has covered extensively this Digital India thing. And the accountants have talked about technology more than technologies themselves can talk about the technology. Actually, that is very commendable. Actually, it is a surprise for me, and it is very actually pleasing also to see that the depth of the knowledge as well as insights you have about the technology and what is going on, not only in government domain as well as private domain also. So I thought of actually covering Digital India extensively, but Srinivasan sir has covered it very extensively and very nicely and comprehensively. So what I'll cover is one of the implementation aspects of whatever we were talking actually. So be it interoperability, be it standards, be it India or digital standards or open APIs, all these distributed and diverse and other systems and all those things. So I'll talk about one of the projects. So what we'll do is rather than talking top down from policies and strategies and other things, I'll take up a project and let us see whether it fits into whatever we are talking actually. Because if government is going and implementing something, so it should actually stand the benchmark of whatever we are actually preaching and in our policy documents and other things. So I'll share a presentation in a moment. Just give me a moment. So I hope the screen is visible.
No. Yes, now started. Yes.
Yeah. So this is about Umang platform actually. This is a unified mobile app for new age governance, acronym for this. And we started very small and we have actually grown into very large actually platform now, integrating 2,000 services across government and some utility services and more than 35 million downloads. So we started as a mobile app actually. We thought of actually providing a mobile app wherein users can come and avail multiple services at one place. There is we tried to solve the problem of discoverability, actually accessibility, digital standards, having API based system and all those things. And then we mooted this project in 2017. So we picked up one of the vision areas of Digital India, that is governance and services on demand and availability of services in real time from online and mobile platforms. So we picked up from there actually under the guidance of one of the secretaries who challenged that, okay, we should be able to do also a couple of things and showcase it to others also that we are able to do this thing from government side also. And this was one of the areas where other people or even private sectors could not have picked up this area. So we picked up this area and we started working on that since 2016, and we were able to launch it in 2017. Honorable Prime Minister launched it in 2017, this Umang platform. So we tried to actually solve many problems, it is more or less the problems of aggregation versus having multiple mobile apps, which all the departments actually. So government is a very big area where each and every department within ministries also you have several departments, all the departments trying to address the same problem in a repeated manner and trying to address all those things. And then there is a additional angle of getting into tenders and all those areas, procurement and this. So we tried to streamline those things and come up with a thing where we can fast track this thing, pace it up, and then it comes in a very fast manner and a very easy manner, and it is actually beneficial to citizens. So we started with that. So what happened is, as a byproduct, we got a very huge platform actually. So we tried to give it as a mobile app, but we got a huge platform, which implements all the standards. It is interoperable. It is federal in terms of actually implementation of state as well as union government services. So, and the platform actually is placed in a manner that where it can be enhanced actually. So we can build upon more things. So if you see that we have a Umang front end, so we keep on, initially it was web and mobile app, and now we are going to launch bot upon it. So all the departments which are integrated to Umang, so they are going to, by virtue of our doing enabling bot on our Umang platform, these services will automatically come on bot. So it will come on Google Assistant, Alexa, as well as Umang bot very soon. And then when we wanted to enable it to third-party apps and in assisted mode, actually we were able to do it very fast. We just need to switch it on, because we were dealing with a very diverse and distributed system, which you can see as department applications at the bottom of the layer. So we thought of that, we taking everyone along into same direction, implementing the standards as well as doing these things won't be possible in a very short while. Even in a long while also, we could feel that in government, if you try to bring along everyone into one place, it is almost impossible to do that. So what we did is that we told them that be whatever you are, we just are going to add a layer if you already have that, or if you don't have, we'll add a API layer onto whatever you're having right now. And then we'll integrate it to Umang. Umang then will become a very standard open API platform, which will expose all these things to all the consumers. Currently, in-house consumers of our web app, mobile app, bot, and third-party apps. And subsequently, it can be opened up to even the departments who want to actually use this, their own services. Second thing is what we did, that we told that we are not going to be custodian of your data, which was a huge actually problem area when we tried to do something on behalf of some other department. So the problem is that when we want to do something, the data becomes very point of contention that, okay, we are not going to share data with you, or we cannot have data. So we told that you keep your data, and data is going to reside with you. We are only going to be a middleware of whatever we are going, it is getting implemented. And upon that, we'll be able to build all the possibilities of, be it emerging technologies like AI, ML. So because we are going to implement recommendations. So we have built upon recommendations on that. We are going to give targeted service delivery. Then we provide insights to department itself, which they were not knowing actually what is going on with their services, how much usage, who are the people who are using it, where it is going, what region, everything. So we have built upon analytics. So at a central place, by unification of all these things, we are able to do these things. So it is a unified interface. So when we did for services, since DigiLocker is a sister project for us in NEGD, so what we did is gave an interface from DigiLocker onto Umang actually. So if you go onto Umang, it will become a central place for you, unified interface with government, where we say that, okay, all the documents are at one place, all your services are at one place. You engage with government at one place actually. So give your feedback even to the departments, the respective departments, the respective owners of the services, and they can notify, and all your chat, your grievances, everything is one place. And all your transactions, since you transact with government on multiple departments multiple times, and you have to keep a track of all the transactions and where are you going to keep, so all your transactions also will be recorded for your purpose, reference purposes here only. So central and state government departments, they were benefited by their very quick provisioning of their services on mobile platform. And it removes the pain of actually tendering, consulting, which is a huge pain actually, procurement and other things. Then expenditure, currently it is borne by Government of India only, but subsequently it is becoming sustainable because of the rich infrastructure which we are creating in terms of APIs as well as other things. So already we have more than 180 departments and around 2,000 services on Umang platform now. So this is one of the perspective from when we are talking. I thought of when we are talking about. I tried to hear what was discussed yesterday as well as today also. So DBT, PFMS, and all those things are one of the common things. So we are picked up by Cabinet Secretariat to when we are talking about DBT and DBT implementation. So they told that okay, we should unify DBT also, so that it becomes very convenient for the citizens to know what is being paid to them actually. And since we were implementing schemes also, so government public expenditure, if you see, it goes to the schemes and to the beneficiaries. So if we put the layer of Digital India, we have already talked about all these keywords: accountability, audit, and direct benefit transfer, and transparency. So it becomes all those things. I'll just briefly share a couple of slides to show what we did with DBT and how we are envisaging further enhancement. So current landscape was that you have all your schemes, multiple departments. Then you have a DBT beneficiary which passes through your PFMS, and DBT payouts are done. And then you are giving it to the DBT beneficiary. So, but the DBT beneficiary also may or may not know or what is going on, and it requires aggregation micro level. At the micro level also, it requires aggregation and an interface and a place where everything is they can go and check and do and all those things. So what we did is that we provided an interface for on Umang, that okay, a DBT beneficiary can come on Umang. It is Umang which will interact with all the departments, and even Umang is integrated with PFMS now. So if you transfer the funds to DBT beneficiary, a push notification as well as alerts can be sent to the users. Users can not only apply through all the schemes through this interface, they can also check what they have received. So it becomes a combined unified platform. Okay, what is going on in terms of the payouts by the government. So we have envisaged to actually do this on Umang, actually a single window picture of individuals DBT on Umang, a snapshot of all DBT schemes and entitlements for them, what is that they can benefit, a DBT dashboard for the department, okay, the payouts and all those things are going to happen. All statements also we are envisaging that whatever is there can be pushed to DigiLocker, which can be made available to the user through the DigiLocker. And then we have an insights layer analytics, okay, that we are doing over that. So this is in terms of very micro and citizens perspective, what we can do in terms of implementation beyond the vision, objectives, policies, strategies, and we have taken up a thread and tried to implement that. So that's it from my side. Very brief presentation. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Can you just remove this?
Yeah, I'm removing this.
Yes. So now, after this entire listening to all the four panelists over here, it's in conclusion and sync with that. Now technology is playing the important role, and we have seen the governments are all doing all possible things to complete have it in the transparency and accountability through the technology. So here are some questions are coming, and we have with us Ajay Kumarji from the UK chapters. So he's very also from the bank and in the Citibank. He's very well connected to India. Do you have any questions, Ajay Kumarji, which you can?
Thank you, Dheeraj, and thanks to all the speakers for the quite a great knowledge and great information you guys have shared. I think as Srini Saab said, it's a great journey, digital journey for India. And specifically, I think they have leapfrogged compared to the other part of the world, where while the digital, progression was happening all along in Western countries, India actually has leapfrogged in ahead of many of them actually. And when I do the comparison between what India offers in terms of digital technology and maybe even in UK, sometimes I feel that India is way ahead. So thanks for all that. I do have some questions from some of the audience and some question of my own. So let me ask the questions on, and maybe one of you can answer that. So I think first question, actually, you all talked about how the digital technology is helping e-governance and how the benefits are reaching to the end of society in much higher percentage than compared to that before. So I think this has enabled e-governance, and it's having lots of compliance is much better than before. Now, how the COVID-19 has impacted or probably has added to the journey of digitization?
May I take that, Dheeraj?
Yes,
May I take that question?
Yes, sir, please.
That's a very interesting question, Mr. Ajay Kumar, and in fact, it's been globally also one of the questions which have been raised. UN, World Bank, and IMF, they're all doing studies on COVID impact in governance and what is the reaction of the government to it. If you had seen the Prime Minister's announcement of Atmanirbhar scheme, there are various components on which he wanted certain benefits to go to the citizens. In terms of, for example, PDS, there was an extra allotment which was promised, and migrants were promised some money. Women got around 500 rupees extra, and then PM Kisan scheme, which used to give 3 installments of 2,000 rupees to every farmer in the country. They brought forward those installments to because of COVID. And in all these things, one of the things which helped Government of India in implementing these schemes was the availability of DBT and was the availability of these systems. Had they not been there, even if we had resources, India is a huge country of 1 billion people with so many states, with so many disparate systems. Reaching the benefits to the last mile would have been extremely difficult. Because of the availability of these kind of digital media helped improve the implementation and distribution to a large extent. It does not mean it is perfect. There were still gaps and there were still problems. For example, there were problems like there were people using technology to tackle solutions. One of the ways in which the virus spread was studied was through mobility solutions, where government looked at mobility data to understand where are the migrants going and where is economic activity reducing, where is economic activity increasing, where the relief has to go. So in many of these cases, technology was a great enabler, and it only strengthened the point that you need to push digital more in order to be ready to look at these kind of pandemics. Even in terms of the strategies for isolation of people who are you had very interesting experiments. People might have heard Karnataka, you quickly, the hospitals are overrun, so people are doing isolation and quarantine at home. So how do I know that I don't stay home, I get out? People are asked to switch on their mobile and send a photograph to, and then their lat long was logged to find out whether they're still within the containment zone or they have not moved out. Applications like that grew up, and now if you see, almost all states have a COVID dashboard and have a COVID application for giving e-pass and various other things, which really helped matters. So it only proved that digital is naturally non-touch, non-physical layer, which is very useful. It only proved that thing.
I think very, very well answered. Digitally definitely helped in the COVID-19 situation. All the people have the dashboard, and Arog Setu app also, everywhere it's now been implemented. And whenever we are entering to the society, or it's, definitely going. So here another question, Ajay ji will ask. So I'll have question to you. How the blockchain, integrated financial management, which you are talking about, where you talk about the big data analysis, and a lot of something. How the blockchain, because the Prime Minister has already spoke about the blockchain is the next big thing going to be there in the government financial management system. How you are handling? Because I have interacted with the various government body in the panchayat, rural development, and as well as in the Minister of Moa, but I didn't find anything. So governments are working in this area. Though I was interacted with the Telangana government, in the state government, they are very keen on the using this technology. So how the things are moving? This is a question to Amit and as well as the Kesan Srinivasan sir.
Amit, would you like to go first? Let Amit say his piece. I'll also come in now.
Yeah, so the accounting perspective is more here actually. Otherwise, what we have talked about, transparency and the removal of discretion and other things, having blockchain is going to help there actually. So
No, I am saying that, definitely is, usability definitely going to help where our Prime Minister is focusing on the blockchain. My point is over here to traceability, to keep the record, to immunity, to the no hacking of system, data security. All things are in the blockchain. So what is the, footpath or plans of the government utilizing this blockchain into the system?
One, I would sound a note of caution. Blockchain is a technology which is used in a system of where natural trust is not there. That is, it's a system where lot of unknown people interact, and blockchain is a way to interact and ensure security. There are certain applications in government where I deal with unknown quantities where blockchain would come in useful, and there are some interesting experiments being done. In fact, Tamil Nadu e-governance agency was trying to do a digi-locker kind of a thing to a citizen using blockchain technology for land records and things like that, which will be also through a push technology where without asking, I don't have to ask for a service. I don't have to ask for my birth certificate. So they identified about 30 odd things which a citizen requires. They said we'll push it to every citizen into a locker and we'll validate it using blockchain. So he does not even have to come and apply or use a bot or a system to ask for something. It will all available to him. He can go and take it anytime he wants. So blockchain is useful in matters where you want to ensure security among people who are not known to each other. However, at present, whether blockchain is being used in a major way, no. But there are interesting experiments being done, which will, if they kind of succeed and scale up from the lab, then you will have areas where security and non-repudiability will be ensured through blockchain. And in my opinion, something like a MCA 21, something like, you don't need a central authority to keep the records. Then it will be, ideal, if you want an ideal use case for blockchain going forward, maybe 22nd century, what Mr. Vikamse was talking about, the GST, the matching of invoices, is an ideal blockchain, perfect blockchain use case. When it goes, then you will not have any of these issues that we are facing currently today.
Right. So, the next follow-up, to you, sir. I think being a part of the NC Energy, you have seen the various accrual accounting systems in the government body. And the three-tier system is already started, and progress well in the accrual basis systems, and the accounting part is being maintained on the some NIC based software. My here question is why the state government and central government is still lacking behind adopting accrual basis system or any kind of like you have used integrated system. Yesterday we were talking about the PFMS system. So my point is that when we have very robust implementation plan in the digitalization, in the PFMS, in the IFMS. So why we in India, in the state government and the central government is still lacking, in the utilizing the that accrual system for the transparency. So why it is, how it is going to be moved forward, we progress well in the local, kind of system in the panchayat, why not in the central government and the state government?
It's a very valid observation that accrual system is a system of future. I found Hamid also talking about intergenerational equity, which is one of the major things which is impacted by a lack of a accrual system. India is not purely cash. It's kind of modified cash. You recognize financial liabilities, but you don't recognize non-financial assets and liabilities. So there are some necessary steps to take to move to accrual. One of the things is we fixed the pension system. We used to have pay-as-you-go pension system, as you know, and we fixed it from 2004. Went into a contributory pension system, which removes one of the major problem areas for accrual accounting. And now we also have a fixed asset register which captures the historical cost, but we don't go beyond it to capture the depreciation, which is one of the things which is required. If you recall, I mean, if you aware, there is the Government Accounting Standards Board, which is functioning under the aegis of CAG's office, which with Gazab, which went on a journey of accrual. Its ultimate objective is to reach accrual. They're taking some baby steps in that regard. They did accrual accounting for some divisions of PWD and some state government departments. Interestingly, one of the earliest projects they wanted me at that time I was AG Tamil Nadu. They wanted me to draw up an accrual account for my office, which I did. I did an accrual accounting for my office where I discovered that my prime real estate property on the heart of the city was worth quite a bit. So there is a journey towards it. You're very right. It is slightly slow. We've got to push it. Now that we've got computerized systems, you've got PFMS, it'll slightly be easier, but it is a difficult journey nonetheless. Yes, Mr.
Yeah, please continue after you finish.
I mean, this thing is, it's definitely a good thing. I would really welcome it. All of us should work together. You people will have a large role to play if an accrual system comes, because it's not a job for one department or one generation of accountants. It's a huge job to get the government initial account drawn up for accrual account of government, where all of us will have to work together to achieve it.
Very rightly said by you. Just before that becomes it, I think we have the next panel where the Jolly sir, from the Gazab, going to take lead on this, and I will certainly take up this question again to the Jolly ji. Yes, becomes here. So,
Dheeraj bhai, see, basically, I think many times there is a fear of the unknown when you look at the state governments or the municipalities. But I think now we've got a fantastic track record. A lot of these local bodies we have sort of shifted to accrual system. And the most important, I think, case study which we have is the railways, Indian Railways. I think the last few years, what work we have done as far as the accrual accounting is concerned, I think possibly if we can just sort of generalize maybe in 1 or 2 pages how we went about, and then take that as a, for going to the state governments and the other, central government bodies, that this is how you can do that. I think it will be helpful. Otherwise, if they fear of them, it's more a matter of prioritizing. They have got a lot of other things on their head. But I think with the support of CNEG, and Gazab, I think we can take that. Already it has been, done in railways. I think railways also is a very large organization. And if it could be done there, we can severely, surely replicate it in the other, I would say large ministries and the bodies which are there in the central government or the state government, as the case may be.
So there's one more question, Srinivasan sir.
I just add on to what Mr. Bikamsi said. In fact, about 10 years back, CAG wrote to all the chief ministers to move towards accrual accounting, and we tried pushing. We also had some sessions with the Indian parliamentarians to educate them on accrual accounting, and IPSAS came in. We gave some this thing on adoption of IPSAS too. But as Mr. Vikamsi has rightly identified, it's a fear of unknown. I think we need thought leadership. I think the accounting profession, ICAI, should come up and do more sessions like this to get this idea into everybody's head that they've got to go towards accrual.
Yes. So, Srinivasan sir, one more question, then Ajay will take a more question. Here, my question is that, you talked about the IFMS, Integrated Financial Management System. I wanted to know more on the IFMS, and we are very new to this system, which is going to be implemented by the government. So, how it going to benefit in terms of accountability in the government, and what is the future prospect? Can you just elaborate more on this?
See, IFMS is a state-wide accounting system. Earlier, the states follow the concept of a drawing and disbursing officer, who is the ultimate holder of budget. The budgets get cascaded down to him, and his expenditure, normally he draws the bill, goes to a treasury, and in the treasury he gives, which we have inherited from the British, he gives the bill, and the treasury does the control of the budgetary control, and then it gives him the check through a bank. It allows him to take it. Now, and after the payment is done, the treasury used to send the vouchers to the AG in the state, and the AG used to compile the vouchers and then draw up the final accounts for all the transactions originating in the state. Now IFMS is a system where all these, they're digitizing about, normally a typical big state will have about 40,000 units, drawing and disbursing officers. They're bringing all of them into a digital fold, and the budgets will get automatically cascaded down to them, and they will, instead of going to the treasury, they will automatically, they'll do it through a digital mode, and the treasury will only be a gatekeeper electronically for budgetary control, and the checks will automatically get paid into their account. That is the system. Some of the states have done an enhancement where they're taking their HR system and merging into it, because most of the bills with these drawing and disbursing officers draw are about 90% salary and entitlement bills. So if you have a HR system, so I know my office has got 5 people and this is a pay scale, this is a pay bill which is to be drawn for every month. And if some person gets transferred in or he gets promoted, that system takes care of his fixing his new pay and entitlement, and it will automatically flow into the treasury, and then electronically it will flow into AG's office. The improvement in accountability is, normally what happens is, if a budget increase is provided to a department, normally if you get it in February or March, it's very difficult for it to reach the last unit, and by the time it reaches, it doesn't have too much of time to spend and things like that. In this system, it will automatically get cascaded down. The rules of cascading it to the last unit will be written up in the system. So if the Secretary of Education gives more money, it will automatically get divided into all the schools in various places. And they can buy their blackboards or whatever. That is the accountability bit of it. And of course, accountability will improve because it's digital.
Thank you very much. Ajay, because we have the limited time, so you can take one more question.
Okay, thank you, Ajay. So last question for me then. We talked about the digitization, we talked about how the government is working towards. But we also have got some user experience which says that the various state and central government websites are not completely geared towards a completely smooth operation. So lots of consumers face issues in accessing these websites. Sometimes, lots of times, it doesn't work. It doesn't work all the time. And I myself have experienced sometimes that when I'm trying to access some of the websites from London, some of the website completely does not work, like Aadhaar does not work. The income tax, some of the website doesn't work. So, in the sense that how should we make it very smooth and, seamless experience across state, central, and all the various entities of the government?
Between Amit and me, I think we should address the question. Amit, you can try. I'll also add my bit.
We are extremely sorry first of all, for that so many sites are not working. But we know that we have taken cognizance of this. It is not that, and we have been working on this continuously. So what we have done, there is in fact a project which is going to be mooted actually. So there are some aspects where efforts have been taken already by NIC. For example, if you see the district websites nowadays, portals or district portals, you'll find a uniformity as well as the UI UX has improved considerably at the district level. So what they have done is they have templatized everything. They have tried to do all these things at one place and then offer it to individual districts on need basis, and they are then the owners of it. But the core things are being still managed by a team of experts at a central place. So they have distributed the work amongst themselves. Okay, that ownership is with you. Changes and all those things you are going to do, and the core aspects we are going to maintain. Similar things are getting extended to other departments also and other ministries also. But government being diverse, sir, let me tell you one more thing, that nobody can enforce anything on any department. That is for me to acknowledge that. Actually, let me tell that we have things which we can do also, but there are certain there is a thing wherein a system, the department which owns that system or which owns that site, they have their own priorities as well as other things to get the things done. And then other part is that system of procurement as well as all those things which we talked of. Umang when I showcase that one of the reasons for doing Umang is standardizing the UI and UX. One of the major USPs of that was standardizing. Even mobile apps have a true same story actually, wherein you have different UI and UX, and most of them are actually substandards, not meeting the standard. So what we are doing is, as a core team, we are sitting somewhere and we are telling that, okay, we'll do this part for you. You own all your business aspects and other things and hand it over these things to us, which does not actually affect your business directly, and we'll take the part of take care part of the technology and UI and UX and other things. So we have already started working in this area. So if you see Umang mobile app, so you will have standard UI UX across 2000 services now. So the buttons, the tiles, the pages, the navigation, all those things is kind of standardized. So you
yes, we are talking about the digitalization too. I think whatever the hedges are there, which will be sorted out in the digitalization too, as mentioned by the case one Srinivasan. Now time is up for the next session, and we have to give the thanks to this panel. Was superb, excellent, session by all panelists. Started with the batting with the Srinivasan on the complete digitalization part. He's mentioned that now we started journey in 2015. Now in the digitalization is completely different. Now we have to see the different India in the digitalization too. And Hamid also spoke very well on the UE front and on the globalization. Nilesh Bikram sir also highlighted what the India has reached in the digital and how the chartered accountant has cumbersome and came out with this utilization of the digitalization. We have seen the GST era, we have seen the various era, the faceless era. So we are as a profession are coming together on the digitalization part. We have seen the Amit also on talking about the various initiatives of the Digital India, and it's a fabulous session. And we know how as mentioned by the Srinivasanji, definitely big complete having a digitalization will complete going to 100% a transparent system, an accountability system. Now, which we are talking about, previously 20, 30 years, we talk about 15% accountability or transparency. Now we reached at least 95 or 96%, and in the digital 2 area will completely India going to be a 100% digitalized and transparent and accountable India. So with this, thank you to all panelists, because we have the next panel. We are delayed by the 10, 15, 20 minutes. So without taking much of time, thanks to all the panelists for your precious time to this.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot.
Starting the next session. Next session is also there. We have got panelists. So thank you all the panelists to this session. And now we immediately starting the next session. Thank you, Nilesh sir. Thank you, everyone. So now this is the next session for the third day. And
I'll just say hello to MPV and Ved Jainji and Mr. Johri and all. Thank you very much. I'll just log out. Thank you.
Good evening, sir. Yes. So welcome once again to this third day and second session of the third day. We have with us my co-chairman C.V. Chitle Sahib from Pune, and we have my council colleague, the Accounting Standard Board Chairman, MP Vijay Kumar. We have the R.M. Johri sir, who's the deputy, who's a Director General from CAG and heading the Gazab in position. And we have the Nalin Srivastava Deputy CGA, and we have the Honorable our own fraternity member and past president of the ICAI, Ved Jain sir, and we have another Henning from the ICAI from UK. So these all the panelists are going to talk about the accounting standard. I just wanted to brief again to the all participants that this is the last session, and I wanted to thanks to all participants, all the today 2,640 viewers of this particular entire 2 days, and I wanted to thank to the all government participants from the AG department, AG, CGA, and municipal bodies and the CNAG So for viewing this program and sending a appreciation notes and sending us a lot of queries, I wanted to brief that definitely we could not able to take up all the queries in the session, but surely will send you the reply and host it on the ICAI website, whatever the query going to come. And 2 days was very excellent. We had listened our honorable CAG Mumuru Saab, and yesterday also we had interacted the Joint Secretary Mahua and CGA also. So we had a number of sessions on the public finance management in the morning just now before we completed the integrated financial management and transparency through the Digital India. Now we have the next session going to be there going to take lead by the MP Vijay Kumar on what role can accounting standard play in the government in promoting transparency. That is the main aspect which we have discussed in the transparency through the technology, in the through digitalization. Now the question which I raised to the earlier speaker Srinivasan, how the government, central government or state government going to take the lead utilizing the accounting standard, and this is the apt topic going to be discussed in here because we have the RM Jori sir also. He's also chartered accountant, and we have privileged a large gathering, good panel speaker. So let's begin this session. I request my council colleague MPB have an opening remark, having thought process, and invite all the panelists to discuss a 10 minute each, then take it on the panel discussion. Over to the MPB.
Thank you, Dheeraj Bhai. Compliments to you on organizing this 3-day wonderful conference. I have great pleasure in welcoming all the members for this session. Our beloved past President Ved Jain ji, Mr. Jori Saab, and the other members, Nalin Kumar Srivatsava ji and Mr. Henning from ICAW. Thank you for taking your time to be here today. Let me begin with conveying my greetings to all the participants who are here today. Trust all of you are healthy and all near and dear ones safe.
Your voice is not coming, MPB. Your voice is MPB. MPB, your voice. MP Vijay Kumar ji. MP Vijay Kumar ji. MPB, we are not able. Hello. MPB.
Yeah.
Hello. Yeah, you're not start again. We could not able to listen you.
Yeah, there's this. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Is it better now? Is it better now?
Yes, it's better now. Please.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Okay. In fact, just before we got into this meeting, I had seen a mail from Mr. Joriji giving us some insights on the good work which GASAB has been doing. And I'm sure he will share insights of the action plan at GASAB to enable government to move into higher quality of financial reporting. But at a high level, at GASAB, we currently have 2 sets of standards. We have what are called IGAS, Indian Government Accounting Standards, which is meant for cash accounting. 6 standards have been issued so far. 3 of them are notified and 3 of them are in the draft stage. Similarly, as part of the initiative to move towards accrual-based accounting, GASAB has formulated the Indian Government Financial Reporting Standards, and so far about 5 standards have been issued, all of which are at the draft stage. On the topic of this session of government transparency and role financial reporting standards can play, I will draw particular attention to accounting standards for local bodies issued by ICAI and government intent to move to accrual, demonstrated with issuance of IGFRS, but I'll come to that rather than start there. The topic is not so much new as more necessary and more urgent than ever before. One of the comments we hear is that developed markets, sovereigns were risk-free is being questioned now. It is clearly the case, and let's remember that sovereign restructurings are not that unusual. Second, we also hear that in relation to the international role of the US dollar, that there is no alternative and that any change from that situation would be a very, very long story. Given the extent of external debt America has, we need to think first about how sustainable this position is and then consider the capacity of the American budgetary system to unwind debt. It is at the very least troubling. 3. A significant part of the capital market activity are trades in sovereign debt, treasury bonds and government securities. Despite that, rigorous reporting requirements that apply to equity trades and corporate bonds do not apply to the much larger category, namely government securities. In some respects, government bonds and corporate bonds trade in a similar manner. Of course, in India, we are yet to see the corporate bond market grow deep enough to its potential. We have individual investors buying government debt, and even when banks buy this large quantum of government debt as part of their SLR and CRR requirements, they are effectively deploying the individual savings which they are channelizing in the form of deposits from the public. The whole concept of investing in government bonds has changed, and they are now subject to micro-analysis requiring detailed financial information. These points bring us to the conclusion that we should regard investors in government securities as being entitled to essentially the same quality of financial information as they receive in relation to investments in corporate bonds or equities. We are also witnessing a huge rise in the public-private partnership projects, most of which are long-term commitments. Also, majority are in infrastructure projects, and the success depends on the government ability to honor its financial commitments. We have certainly seen few established companies expressing disinterest in public-private partnership projects on concerns of non-timely payments. Given the above, increasingly there is an ask for more high-quality financial information. Of course, there are several reasons why government should produce good financial information. Political accountability and effective financial management are two of them. Let me quote the chairman of International Accounting Standards Board, Hans Hugerwurst, who said nearly a decade back that without transparency, there can be no enduring stability. This is as valid for public finance as it is for the private sector. So what is required for transparency in the government financial reporting? It is little different to what one would expect in the private sector. Two key elements though are: one, reporting according to a set of accounting standards which are determined through a process which by virtue of its independence gives those standards legitimacy, and here CASA plays a very important role. Second, an independent audit to give assurance that the information reported is reliable. Today, focus is largely on reporting. Auditing derives value when it is against an appropriate set of accounting standards. Accounting standards are a priority. The financial information is of great value if it enables comparisons to be made between entities and, in our case, sovereign governments. This objective of comparability through convergence is one which in the private sector has been achieved with reasonable success in the last 2 decades, with IFRS becoming an acceptable financial reporting framework across the world. And I recall, it was during the presidency of the past President Ved Jainji, who is here today in the panel, that India took the giant step of deciding to move towards having an IFRS converged set of standards. And further, thanks to G20, Financial Accounting Standards Board of US and IASB have engaged in convergence of US GAAP and IFRS, which is visible in the recently issued standards such as revenue from customer contracts, leases, and insurance contracts. Now, at present, investors in sovereign debt generally do not get high quality financial information. Most governments, not just India, globally, do not produce a balance sheet. A very few do. The balance sheet has interesting features like assets, physical and financial, liabilities, debt and not debt, and net liability or net assets. Instead of equity, you have either excess of liability over assets or excess of assets over liabilities. All these elements are essential for a coherent picture of fiscal position. It enables the investor to see all the claims against the government, including those that are not debts, and it reports the assets available to meet those claims. It also importantly reports net assets or net liability, giving information which is useful in assessing the vulnerability to shocks. Many developed countries have significant liabilities in excess of their assets in their public balance sheet. We have Mr. Henning here today. The UK government, for example, has net liabilities of over $2 trillion. Despite this negative net assets or liabilities being in excess of assets, most countries are able to borrow as needed to fund their operations and investments needs. This is because of an unmeasured intangible assets, the sovereign's ability to raise taxes from the population into the future. This market confidence explains why most governments in developed countries can continue to borrow very cheaply, while developing countries without significant natural resources pay much higher rates to obtain funding. As more governments start to prepare accrual-based financial statements, there is starting to be a real opportunity to embed balance sheet management into public sector financial governance. Assets are resources that can be used to generate a return, whether financial or social. Governments need to ask whether they are getting the returns they need or ask if the money invested could be better used elsewhere. Liabilities need to be serviced or settled, taking money from other priorities and constraining the ability of government to provide public services and support to the citizens. Governments need to ask whether they can reduce their existing liabilities and how they limit the growth of new liabilities. If both assets and liabilities can be managed more effectively, which is possible only with accrual-based accounting, then resources can be targeted at where they can do the most good. Fortunately, the previous session also I was hearing at the concluding session, technological advances are going to make the preparation, consolidation, and audit of government integrated financial statements much easier. Technologies like distributed ledger, namely blockchain, has the potential to overcome data quality and structure issues. Investment will be needed, but in the future, more and more governments will be able to quickly and accurately produce a balance sheet. It is therefore important that policymakers and those holding policymakers to account, namely including parliaments and assemblies, make managing public balance sheet a key priority for financial management and governance. While on this, it is also pertinent to note that there are few countries like New Zealand who actually have positive net assets. The country has balance sheet where assets are excess of liabilities. While financial performance and position are reflected in the financial statements, other factors also have a bearing. This is no different than the private sector, where the financial statements are helpful, but they need to be viewed in the context of the organization's business model, market position, technological readiness, etc. We have witnessed several countries going into financial difficulties. We have seen it in the recent past in Europe. Governments should provide essentially the same information as issuers that they, through their securities or corporation laws and regulations, require of companies. Not only should they provide the information, as I said earlier, it should be subject to an independent audit. Again, to stress the difference between what governments require of corporate issuers and how they behave themselves, I recall an instance of auditors of the US government consolidated financial statements. I think it's about 12 years back or so. Give a disclaimer that they will not express an opinion because the underlying information is too unreliable, citing serious financial management problems in the Department of Defense. And we have seen in US early 2000s, the financial reporting failures in private sector, Enron and the like, have led to swift action, including the passage of the Sarbanes-Oxley Act and the creation of regulatory bodies for private sector in most major countries. But that was for the private sector. What is it about the government? There is an inherent resistance in many governments, I'm talking about the world at large, to change to accrual. What are those obstacles? There are many. Some of them include financial reporting policy issues, accounting resources, and I know Gasab has been doing a good job in terms of developing competencies across the various states, constitutional and legal restrictions. But in my view, just one serious one, at least for the middle income and developed countries, the political will for transparency is the key obstacle. Having said the above, I am sanguine that governments are now getting more serious on financial discipline, and high quality financial reporting will only make governments more effective in meeting the objectives. Governments are highly respected when they are accountable, and high quality accounting is fundamental to being accountable. Thank you for your patient listening. And I recognize the presence of my council colleague and vice chairman of the committee, Chandrasekhar Chitleji. I did not notice him earlier. Over to you, Dheeraj. Thank you for the opportunity again.
Thank you, MPV, for a brief thought process on this topic. And being you are the chairman of the Accounting Standard Board, you can definitely, say on this, you being a ICAI authority on this. So let's begin this working with the Jory sir. So MPV, if you can, Jory sir is the main. So if you can have a brief intro of him, and then we can start working with this.
Just a second. I've been fortunate to be part of the authority where Mr. Jory is also a member, and had the opportunity of listening to his views on the subject and the kind of accountability he seeks to bring on the matters relating to corporate reporting. Thank you, Jory Sab, for accepting our invite and joining us in this panel discussion. Mr. Jory is perhaps the most professionally qualified civil servant with multiple educational qualifications decorated for him. He's a BCom from Honors from the Sriram College of Commerce, Delhi. And for Mr. Henning's benefit, it's one of those most sought after prestigious colleges in India in commerce. He's a chartered accountant, cost accountant, a certified information systems auditor from the ICAI, US. He's a certified internal auditor from IAI, Florida, certified public accountant from AICPA, US, and a master's in public management from Harvard Kennedy School. So enviable. Thanks for inspiring us with that kind of educational qualifications, sir. The courses on chartered accountancy He had pursued his training with PricewaterhouseCoopers between 85 to 89, and cost accountancy was done during the same period, and he had secured the 11th rank All India in the CA examinations. He belongs to the Indian Audit and Accounts Service, a premier civil service of the federal government of India. He has been in senior management of the organization of C&AG, having 30 years of post-qualification experience, and is responsible for policy decisions. He is a public sector governance professional with key competencies in public administration, accounting, finance, taxation, and the like. He has contributed to the deregulation of power sector in India by formulation of the guidelines way back in 1995, which benefits India has witnessed in the last 2 decades, to such an extent that in almost all states we today are a power surplus state. While working in Ministry of Education, Government of Botswana on a foreign assignment between 1998 to 2005, he had conceived and established a system of real-time budgetary financial control system, and also made substantial contribution in implementing World Bank and DFID projects. Working with the C&AG office, he has led the audit team in various prominent national and international assignments, including UN bodies and its various constituents. And C&AG was on the board of UN auditors from 1996 to 2002 and has been appointed again from 2014 to 2020, and is widely traveled, and his count of travel is about 50 countries as on date. He has worked as technical advisor to IPSAS, International Public Sector Accounting Standards Board of IFAC, and he also has been actively involved in government accounting standards formulation and implementation. He was member of expert committee of the Institute of Chartered Accountants of India for drafting accounting standards for local bodies, and before taking the present charge, he was designated as the CIO, Chief Information Officer of the institution of C&AG, and he has made rapid strides in the digitalization initiatives of the office of C&AG. With this introduction, which I should confess a brief introduction, I have actually shrunk to only 1/3 of what achievements and exposure he has. But more importantly, as a fellow chartered accountant, I take great pride in presenting Mr.
Please,
Jody.
it is really brief now. You should stop, yeah.
Over to you, Mr. Jody.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, give me 1 minute. There's some problem of connecting to Blue Jeans from laptop. I'm connecting through my mobile, so I'm having some difficulty. While Mr. Jody speaks, I'll log out and try to log in through the mobile.
Sure. Please go ahead.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah. First of all, a very good. Okay. I think we are the time we are overshooting a bit, so let's start. A very good afternoon to all of you, and it is a privilege to me to speak to you. And in fact, good morning to the gentleman from UK. I think you are not still 12 at the moment. Well, it has been a pleasure working for such a long time with government and with the private sector. And in fact, I don't need to start with accounting standards and the emphasis which it has. But I would like to speak as a layman, because at times when we get too much entrenched into the intricacies of the standard, perhaps its relevance in the overall perspective becomes a bit diluted. So what it is, meaning as all of us know, we are practicing persons, accounting is the language through which the rest of the world knows what the organization is doing. It has many stakeholders. And as I see, that if language has to be effective, then perhaps the person who is speaking and the person who is listening, they should understand the subject matter in the same sense. And that is also possible only when there is a bit of standardization. If the language which I am speaking, like if the words which I speak or the sentence I speak, the other person does not get it in the same sense, then perhaps the communication cannot occur. So there lies the importance of the accounting standard, that it standardizes the communication of the organization with the rest of the world. So there is something which makes it more important in the sense that it not only makes the things consistent, it makes the comparison possible over the years for an organization, but it also makes comparison possible across with many entities in the same sector or so. So there lies the importance of the accounting standard. And the most important thing what it does, it reduces the discretion, or rather it contains the discretion to more productive channels so that a person can be guided. It provides the benchmark, what requires to be done under the circumstances. And if all of us have been associated with the standard making process at some stage of our life, and we know that the process is very stringent, it's very participative, it is done over a period of time. So when this body of knowledge comes out with certain piece of paper, it is a considered decision which has taken into consideration what needs to be done. At the same time, at the implementation level, what should be the considerations and how it is going to add value. So it is a considered body of knowledge which can be used by the people at large to their benefit. In fact, anything which is made as per the standards, there the quality increases and there is a greater acceptance and reliability attached to it. Like CAP Vijay Kumar was saying that we converged with the IFRS. What was the reason for that convergence? Meaning we never thought about it earlier, first 60 years of independence. But later on we took a decision that is to be done. Because as the economy was getting integrated with the world economy, in fact, there were a lot of borrowings which were done, a lot of funds were coming in the form of investment to India. But if someone wants to invest in India, first of all, it would like to know what is its financial position. And if the financial position is not depicted as per internationally recognized standards, how are they going to assess that what they're going to invest into? And that was the reason that increasingly that we had to go for convergence with the IFRS as such. And I'm told that at the moment Indian accounting standards are fully converged with the IFRS, which is a very good achievement, and I think Institute deserves a credit for it. Then, in fact, with e-governance initiatives which Government of India has taken, now the concept is coming of evidence-based decision making. In fact, if you would have heard Prime Minister speaking on many occasions, he talks about that accounting is not mere those activities which happen after the event has happened, just to record it and show it what has happened. Perhaps he is hinting at that accounting should be a means for generation of information for decision making, which means that both the timeliness and the quality has to improve over a period of time. Its credibility has to improve over a period of time so that it becomes the basis of decision making. And we can take decisions based on evidence which is actually there rather than based on perceptions. So this is something which is a very big gap which we have to fill now. And in fact, if we see the technological developments which are happening across the country, it is feasible now to have a system in place whereby we have the timeliness and quality. And if those two are achieved, it will add to the transparency in the governance process. And one thing which I would say is that, in fact, there have been certain compliance and regulatory requirements. In fact, if someone would have seen last 10, 12 years in India, meaning Bakas came into place, then NAFRA has come into place, the regulation is increasingly becoming more. What is the reason for it? Well, if we see it in perspective, regulation was there in the advanced countries quite a bit. But regulation in this country, the impression is that perhaps we have to run fast and go towards regulation more. The reason is that when private sector will start playing a very major role in the economy, then we have to ensure that private sector works for the benefit of the country. Ultimately, if the country does well, then every other sector can be said to be doing well. So this compliance to the regulations and to the legal requirements I think that is also very essential aspect, and it becomes a much easier proposition when the standards and their enforcement is in place. Because then at least the benchmark has been set in, and persons know that if these benchmarks are not to be followed, then perhaps they will be highlighted in the auditor's report, and the regulatory action would follow. So it has become very important that we start the ball rolling by putting the standards into place. And in fact, I have always felt that if the improved quality of accounts comes basically as a result of the standards, then the preparation of estimates also becomes quite easier, in the sense that the whole budgetary mechanism is based on estimates. But if the figures on which these estimates are being made are not reliable, then how far the budgetary estimates can be reliable? So if we improve that quality of accounts, then perhaps even the estimates for future would improve in the course of time. And in fact, these accounting information become the basis of many valuation exercise. And in fact, those valuation can also be done only when the things are, first of all, accounted correctly. And that is the basis. In fact, I was always wondered that Institute of Chartered Accountants, they're basically auditors. Why is it called accountants? If you see England and Wales, it is Institute of Chartered Accountants of England and Wales. You should see US, it is called Certified Public Accountant. Why do they say auditors? The reason is that the word audit owes its existence to accounts. Because if the accounts are not there, perhaps no effective audit can take place. And it becomes the benchmark. It sets the ball rolling. It is the first step towards the accountability mechanism. So when we talk about accountability, we talk about transparency and governance, we have to talk about accounts, because that is the base on which the other things are going to follow. So we have to be very careful about that. And in fact, perhaps the accounting profession as such, or the accounting function as such, has not got the emphasis which it deserves in the overall accountability mechanism. In fact, if you ask me, the word accountability has been derived from accounts, because the accountability word would not have arisen but for the accounts. And now, in today's world, in fact, when it all originated in the mid 18th century or so, when industrialization came into place, at that time the enterprises became very big. And there was I would say, the owners became different from the managers. When the owners were managing it themselves, then perhaps he knew everything that what is happening. But when the managers came into place, how to hold the managers accountable? There lies the accounts, because accounts is the basic thing. If we set the accounts right, I think we have made a very solid foundation for the accounting mechanism to sort of work. So this is something which thought I'll make a point. In fact, within the time given, it is very difficult to sort of cover all the things. But this I thought I would mention, although we are all practicing persons and we would know the importance of accounting standards in the overall scenario. But we have to be slightly cautious about here. There are two things which I have noticed while framing the accounting standards. They do introduce certain amount of inflexibility and the cost of compliance also. So you have to have a balance. While they have their inherent advantages, they assist in preparing better set of accounts, we should not go overboard and try to do things for which it would be very difficult to comply, or rather compliance would be difficult, or it would render the things so inflexible that it will be very difficult to take decisions. So these things we have to keep in mind and then go ahead with the framing. Now I will go through what government has done. In fact, as I said earlier, government, meaning accounting, was not one of those priority areas for the government, meaning which is a reality. But increasingly government has realized that perhaps this is the first step towards the transparency and the accountability mechanism. So more and more emphasis is being given to accounts now. And in fact, if we go to accounting standards, well, this body, the sub, I have shared certain documents, perhaps you can go through it. This was formed in the year 2002. But we are 18 years from now, and as on date, only 3 standards have been notified, and about 6 to 7 standards are exposure drafts, and those are exposure drafts for last 8 to 10 years, which shows that perhaps government is not very serious about this particular process. But then, now the things are changing. Government also has, what options it has under the circumstances. Meaning it is not a question of your own accountability. It is a question of that you sit in the Committee of Nations, and even the IMF and World Bank are also judging constantly what type of performance different economies have. And when you get assistance or you get loans, your credibility, your creditworthiness, your ranking, it does matter. So if that is the criteria, then perhaps the account should be assisting in showing the correct picture. In fact, perhaps government had realized that they were not too much enthusiastic about showing the right picture, because it may be a counterproductive situation, in the sense that if the real picture is shown, then perhaps the rating which you get or the impression which the people get would be much more. So perhaps the first step would be refining the accounting practices themselves so that we are able to depict the right picture. I'll give you a few examples. Like if you take GDP, in fact in GDP, a large part of the GDP does not enter into the GDP calculation. I'm referring to those farmers who produce for self-consumption. So perhaps the GDP figures which we cause is slightly higher than what is shown in the books of accounts. Similarly, many things which are quantified in other nations, say the people who work voluntarily, domestically, without charging any fee or charge, it's a very big sector. It is not counted there. So, and neither our accounting mechanism is developed to an extent that these finer aspects can be a part of it. So perhaps we will have to, when we are thinking in terms of improved presentation, improved disclosures, improved things, we will have to also see that what all things have to be included in it, so that after the accounting practices are refined, then perhaps the right picture comes out. Because if we refine the practices and we do not do the basic things right, then perhaps the impact which will come overall will not be the right picture down below. So these are the things which have to be done. Well, one more thing which I say is that government, for that matter, will have to take a call. That look, perhaps things have improved. Like if you see mid-90s or so when privatization started or we started liberalizing and all, at that point of time there was a fear that perhaps our industries will not be able to cope up with the competition and will go down the lane. But see the country today. At that point of time, you had to mortgage your gold to take loan. At the time, you are the 4th or 5th highest in the reserves. The country has survived. So perhaps facing the reality does not at any point of time sort of make you less effective or efficient. So perhaps the time has come in which we will have to accept the reality what it is and then take steps that where to take from it. So this is something which we will have to take a call, that what is required to be done. As far as GASAB is concerned, we have a very interactive process, but there is a challenge there. In fact, if you see our constitution, it all flows from Article 150 of the Constitution, in which it is said that the form of accounts would be decided by President in consultation with the CAG. And consultation with the CAG means, yes, it does come to CAG, but the power notification is over, exposure draft has been gone for notification, it does not get notified, then perhaps the wheel does not start. Because if something is not notified and it is not a compliance requirement, you can't ask anyone to follow it. And even the auditors cannot point out on its non-compliance or the impact of it. So whenever we see a process, we will have to see from end to end. It is implementing on this ground and producing the desired results which is important. So a theoretical exercise of making a beautiful standard may not work. We will have to see about the notification mechanism also. We will have to set a time limit for it, and we will have to see that it is implemented in right earnest, and we will have to even educate the auditors that look, the non-compliance of it, what impact it has, and why we to follow, and non-observance of it has resulted in what? That has to be also a requirement. Then only perhaps we will achieve our objective. Then the challenges, yes, few challenges I would say. The first biggest challenge is the mindset. I think we have to realize the fact that change is the only constant. What has been done in the past, we should neither take pride in it nor criticize it too much. We should, whenever we think about or we have to take a call or a decision, we have to think what is there in the future and how it is going to benefit us into the future. If we are convinced that it is going to benefit, I think we should take a call. That is what the approach has to be. And we should be very serious about it, in the sense that we should think in terms of that it is the commitment at the top which is going to help. In fact, Ravi Kumar had talked about accrual system of accounting. If you trace, I think Government of India came out with certain things in 2012 to say accrual accounting is to be there. I think in one of the budgets, Jaitley sir had mentioned in 2016 that this is our priority. We have to go for accrual accounting. But just saying it is a different proposition, and then saying that how convinced you are, because when you introduce new thing, you will have problems. You will have to tide over it, and then only you can pass through it and go through it. When GST was implemented at that point of time, at this point of time, we are much better than that. So if we are very serious about the accounting reforms, if we are very convinced about the accounting standard, perhaps we will have to go through that phase, the grinding process of 2 to 3 years before the things stabilize. But for that to happen, you will have to have a conviction that this is something which is required to be done, and then we go ahead and then go and implement it. Advantages I have already mentioned about the budgeting system. One more thing which I felt, which perhaps is a thought for discussion in the panel discussion later on. We work by a system of parliamentary, budgetary and financial control. The process starts with the making of the budget. It is voted in the parliament, then it becomes grants, then expense happens, then the accounting happens. Think of a scenario that we think we are going for accrual accounting, but this is a stage much after. If something is budgeted on a cash basis and then in the accounting it happens on accrual basis, how will the two match? How will you ensure that whatever was budgeted was spent? So would you need to go for accrual processes at the budgetary stage itself for them to match? Because Parliament sanctions a particular amount to be spent or to be received based on the estimates. So if the accounting is different from that, then how would you say that this was as per what was being voted by the Parliament? So when we talk about accrual accounting, perhaps we talk about in small phases. We have to see from end to end the whole system of parliamentary control, budgetary and financial control, and say, yes, if we have to go to accrual because of these advantages, then where do we start? How do we go in different stages until we reach there? Then, some countries which went for the accrual system of accounting, although I'm convinced it's a better system because it give you certain things which a cash basis can never give you. But then the fact is that when you go for accrual system of accounting, you make the accounting system more complicated because the set of assumptions and presumptions increase. And do you have a mechanism to handle those presumptions and assumptions? If not, then accrual system, will it achieve the desired result or not? Because, let me give you an example. Suppose it is a valuation of a building. If you go to two experts, they will not agree on that. And if valuation has to be done as per market value every year, then perhaps, everything will become so judgmental that it is very difficult to incorporate it in the books of accounts. So first of all, we will have to have discussion on that and see that what are the perceived advantages. Even if these advantages are, what type of new uncertainties or difficulty it is going to introduce and what needs to be done because that will have to be done at the planning stage itself before going ahead with the decision that we have to implement it. So these things will have to be kept in mind. And in fact, India as a country, if you ask me, we have 3 tiers of governance. I talk about the 3rd tier also earlier. Look, the 3 tiers of governance are there, and it is a vast country. In fact, and the ground realities are much different in different stratas. So, if you want to take a decision which is uniform, will it be able to cater to the needs of all the people down below and would serve our information requirements for decision making or not? This is something which we will have to answer in the like as planners or maybe as persons who want to take decision. And even if we are convinced, then perhaps we will have to chart out the whole course of action, what needs to be done first, what would follow later, what would be the stages, and then how it can be achieved. So these are the things which I will put up to the panel for discussion. Then perhaps they can think all these things and then see what best can be done about the whole system of budgetary financial control. Then as far as compliance to the accounting standards are concerned, I would say it would be once the standards are formed and they are notified, then perhaps compliance also would require certain training of the people at large. Compliance would mean that a person first understands what is required to be done. How does he collect the relevant information to be able to comply with it from authentic sources? And then what is the procedure for compliance has to be followed? And even the auditors will have to be educated about it so that they can say that the due process have been followed, so there is a greater chance or probability of compliance being done. And in case compliance is not done, then what needs to be done at that stage and how it has to be highlighted, how the impact has to be quantified and mentioned in the books of accounts. That mechanism will have also to be worked out for the compliance to become a reality. Then, as far as consolidated financial statements are concerned, there's a point mentioned earlier. At the moment, there does not seem to be any proposal to that effect, because I think this is something which is in the later stages. I think the first stage would be that we think about accounting standards in the sense that we have to think end to end, because standards are not an end in itself. They are a process. They are a means to achieve an end. So we have to develop those standards which will take us near to the end. And then we have to think about the whole process of its notification, whole process of its compliance, from the point of view of the people who will be complying and people who will be reporting on the compliance process also, and then go ahead with a specific time frame in mind to see this happen. I think I'll stop here and because I would like to have more time for the panel discussion towards the end.
Yeah, so much information. We didn't want it to stop. It's coming out from your heart, and a lot of information for the benefit of the members. It's great. So now, MP, we just take, quickly, just skip introduction part if you can. Small.
Sure. Thank you, Jyoti sir. Actually, it was excellent articulation. As Dheeraj said, it was coming out of your heart, and your 3 decades of experience was visible, and more particularly the way you address the ground realities in such a transparent manner. In fact, the transparency with which you spoke actually gives confidence to all people who are listening here that the country's financial system is in safe hands of people like you. And with this, I invite our past president, Ved Jain ji, to address the members. I'll just take 30 seconds of introduction of Ms. Ved Jain ji.
I think we can avoid it.
It's an enviable profile, and I'm sure there are some first-time members who are hearing him, and I think they should know that it's such an enviable profile because it inspires people to do more. He's a chartered accountant rank holder, but apart from that, he's one of those very few who are a triple graduate in science, a graduate in economics, and graduate in law. And he's been a member of IFAC board as well. And in the institute while he served as the president. That was the period in which we took the landmark decision of converging the accounting standards with IFRS. He serves on board of several companies and particularly adds lots of value on risk management. And we all know him as one of those subject matter experts on taxation. With these very few words, sir, I welcome you to share your thoughts.
Thank you, Mr. Vijay Kumar, for that nice compliments. Chairman of the committee, Mr. Dheeraj Khandelwal, a dear friend. Vice Chairman, Mr. Chitle. And of course, the keynote speaker today, Mr. Ram Johri. I'm really very pleased to hear you, sir. I have not known you earlier, but today I heard your qualification and your background. It was very, very impressive. You are occupying a very key position, and the agenda of the accountants to carry accounting standard is in the right hand, as I can hear you from you. And of course, my fellow panelists, Mr. Henning and Mr. Nalin Srivastava. Okay. It's my pleasure to be part of this program. And I must confess, though I am basically a tax consultant, accounting standard is not my domain area, though it's chartered accountant, but as a past president and having been involved with the institute various activities, I had a few good memories also and all fond memories also, and at the same time, I have a passion that these standards should be should be implemented at all levels. And just for the sake of, I believe, because we are maybe many of the accountants are aware, how this accounting profession has gone ahead in accounting standard. I will just demonstrate you. This is the only profession in world in accounting, I will say, which had made sure that the accounting standard and their implementation, how it has to go about it. As Mr. Johri was speaking, how accounting standards are important for making a comparison. And to know that apple versus apple is the right thing, I used to give a very common example that there are two profit and loss accounts. One is valuing the closing stock at cost and one is valuing the closing stock at a selling price. And you will find both profit and loss accounts showing different profit. Otherwise, the entities are the same. And this is only the standard which ensures that both profits are same, because it will say, no, you have to value the unsold stock at cost or realizable value, whichever is lower following conservative. So you know where you stand as on that day. That's accounting knowledge. And now what accounting profession has done, just understand and how it can help the government on this part, that's the issue. First is to make sure that accounts are prepared in accordance with the accounting standard. Accounting standards are nothing but the standard operating procedures and control which need to be adhered to. As we see, we want to go buy a sweet or some consumer good in the market, and we go to a halwai or a tea sweet shop, we want to be sure that the product and the material which is using for manufacturing or producing those products is good. So there is a standard, the milk we will buy, the sugar from where buy, how it will test it, the hygiene he will do, packing he will do, he will ensure the timing he will do. These are the standard which is there, and that inspires confidence in the buyer of the product, and that brings a brand value and a good value. Similarly, I believe for corporates, over a period, the way the accounting standard have developed, it has created a brand and a value for each of the corporate which have adopted these standards, that they can internationally, because now the world has become too small globally, or all internet and all facilities are there. Now everyone knows these accounts which are being shown or which are being projected by these corporate are reliable, and they do reflect the correct picture what is there. And that helps the corporate in minimizing the cost, what is the borrowing, also in generating investment. That's the most important, because one investor will like to invest in a corporate, he knows and understands that these accounts which are reliable, etc. And that is where I say these standards are important for the government. As I could see, and in Indian perspective, when we look at the budget of the corporate aggregate and the budget of the government, including the state government, my rough estimate say the corporates and the state may be 30% to 70%. So corporates which are as on today operating in the commercial world on this basis, they just constitute 30% of the total economy, as against 70% of the economy being in the accounting, being with the government and with the state governments, a union government and the state government. And we all know that in this case, 70% in case accounting and standards are not being followed, that the challenge lies that how do I ensure a confidence in my system which will help in promoting my economy. Now take a case if in India we follow this accounting standard and what we call like accrual, including accrual accounting, my status, my goodwill as a India goes up, and people who would like to lend money to Indian corporate, people who would like to invest money in India will go up. And in that process, Indian corporate and Indian government and everybody will be able to borrow money at a cost lesser than what others will be able to get, because we say, yeah, your economy, your standard, what you are saying is correct, and on that basis we have reached this conclusion. As we see the case of the banks. Now banks say that if you have a AAA rating, your rate of interest will be this. But if you have a AA plus, the rate of interest goes up by a few decimal points. Why it is? Basis point. Why it is so? Because they say, yes, your credibility. And one of the criteria for rating is how transparent you are and how you are adopting those standards, how you are adhering to standards. Now, if I look at a professional, because my topic as a professional, I look into this. When the corporate world has taken quite a reasonably good time to come adhere to it, and that's why I see few of the Indian corporates are able to borrow money at a very substantially lower cost, get a good amount of investment. It's a good time for India also to go and accept these standards in the government accounting so that the overall confidence of the world economy and world investors rises more in Indian economy. And if that happens, I'm of the view it will be economically beneficial. Sometimes we believe, as Mr. Johri was saying, that there are some challenges, or also I do agree, even if there is a cost of transition, which I believe, yes, in India of such a magnitude, where we have a different issues, etc., it may be a challenge in adopting and converting overnight. That may be a big challenge. But I see, looking to the experience which we had in 2017 when we adopted GST, I believe the challenge was similar challenge. These type of reform, I will be say third generation reform, which will put India in the lead among the developed nation. I am not saying in lead in the developing nation, a lead with the developed nation. As I was looking to the many countries of the OECD also still not following accrual system of accounting, so there is a transparency otherwise also. So that's it. There's a need to consider and look into that. Now coming to the aspect that if all of us, I believe government having constituted this Government Accounting Standard Advisory Board way back in 2002, in principally agreed, yes, these accounting standards are good and they need to be implemented. Government in principle, when the then finance minister says we need to move to the accrual system of accounting, has agreed in principle, yes, these are good and required. Having done so, there is a need to fix a time schedule. Yes, by this time we will be doing this on the issue. As Mr. Johri was saying, that we have just notified 3 accounting standards for the government accounting, and there are 5 or 6 in the pipeline and draft accounting. I believe the speed has to be increased on that part. And this will be, in my opinion, will be a more productive. I give an example now, see, the common example for understanding for the purpose of common man, because ICAI need to take a lead, and of course Mr. Johri as a chairman of this government accounting center, they need to convince people how it helps. Now accounting profession having developed this standard, this is helping. But look at what is happening. There are many other issues where how the difference is not measured. If somebody tells me in kilometer and somebody tells me in miles, I am at loss to find out which one is correct, which one is not correct, because we have not been able to find out. Similarly, when we measure temperature, we say 37 degree and we say 98.4 Fahrenheit. I believe that that's also a difference which is created. But if you put a standard that you have to measure in this manner, the health of the economy, health of the finances is going to help India in a big way, that way this issue. My suggestion, now there may be few questions on the issue that if it is so urgent, if it is so important, and if it is so helpful, what is withholding the government and what is withholding the policy maker in implementing this? Frankly speaking, I am of the view, sometimes there is an apprehension that this may create a problem in the beginning. I do agree transition may be a little difficult. Sometimes priority may be different, that it may not be a priority. Sometimes there may be a political compulsion also. But I believe as we did way back in the year 1992, we took a big step of liberalizing Indian economy. And that was also a big gamble which India played at that time. And our experience says that gamble has worked well and Indian economy has grown up like anything. After this pandemic and coronavirus which has happened in 2020, the entire year is gone and economies are otherwise having difficult times, having again the 3%, 4%, 5%. Now we are looking to negative growth of 10% and above like this issue. This is the right time where a government can take a decision and say to look for propping up our economy and making this is the right time because some hit is required because of this. This will be the right time to take hit because that's otherwise pandemic is there or that was the issue there. So my suggestion on that part will be that yes, as a professional, we need to do it. The government as on date is the biggest spender, biggest earner. Only difference between a corporate and the government is corporate earns by making sales of the product and services. Government makes money out of the taxes which are out of the product and the services. Some economic services here or there, some licensing, etc. here or there. And the government spending is there on capital and revenue, both there. It will be a very, very helpful to the government to find out their productivity, their effectivity. ICAI in the past, I can recall way back in 8-9 has carried out some accrual accounting for the municipal bodies, etc. And then we came in experience for a Jeep which was purchased in 40,000 rupees. During the year, the petrol bill was of 14 lakh rupees. That was a cash basis of accounting. And one couldn't find it out because that throws a light. And now, I think ICAI Research Foundation has carried out many projects for the conversion of the cash to accrual. All those municipalities are now in a position to raise money from the market because their balance sheet is there and people can have a confidence, look, these are a surplus balance sheet and these will be able to serve the debt which they are raising in the market and they need not come to the government or begging here, etc. They can put utility services, generate money out of this, repay the debt, service the debt, repay the debt. Same thing can happen with the government. If the government comes out with their balance sheet and government is accrual accounting and government has a standard, it will inspire confidence in government and nobody has to go outside. I will generate a facility, I will construct a bridge, I will make a road, a toll which I will collect and I will repay, service the debt and that's the issue. I think that's my professional view and looking to the time constraints, I will stop here and in case time permitting, so a few questions, we'll take it. Thank you, Mr. Dheeraj. Thank you.
Thank you, my past president, Bejan sir, for excellent thought process. You rightly said that you rightly hit the ball to the jury, sir. You know, its time is there for, more transparency in the accounting side, accounting standard side. India has started with the, transparency from the technology front of view. Now we have to also move forward in the accounting standard. And ICAI, last year, myself as, being a chairman, he came out the entire accounting standard for the public accounting body. So it's based on the IFMS, like in the IFRS, we came with the Ind AS, the same case with the, ASLVs, accounting standard for local bodies. We came out the entire rollout, the entire accounting standards. We moved to the government. We showcased that, now we have the complete accounting standard. Until last year, we were 15 accounts and now we have the 28 entire exception are 3 or 4, which is a low priority. We complete roll out the accounting standards. So now
I'd like to add something, a recent development, which I think I forgot to mention. In fact, we have accepted the fact that, we have to do it fast now. So what we have done is that in association with IMF SARTRAC, which has a presence in India also, we have taken up a study whereby gap analysis is being done between the IFSA's cash basis of accounting and the government accounting. And the gap analysis is almost over, In fact, what we are aiming it as that once we are clear what requires to be done, then perhaps we will suggest something that within a specified time interval, we becomes like IFSA's cash compliant. So this is something which is a development which is started. We started working on it and the study is already being initiated. and in fact, we are taking pilot projects in few states. So let us see what is the outcome of it. And after that, a timeline would be decided to make it IPSAS cash compliant.
Great. So wherever you need ICAI help, we are there to you. And as mentioned by the Abhijit sir, Institute also came out with the technical guide on the municipal bond under the leaders of the MPB in the last year. And this year we have the revision of that booklet, and which is more important. And
if I interrupt for a minute, just a minute, I'm sorry, I'm not interpreted. Taking cue from Jory, I say we are 300,000 plus chartered accountant across India. And looking to the transition, I think ICAI can offer its services on voluntary basis, putting at least 100 chartered accountant for each of the states and at least 5 chartered accountant for each of the municipalities and the local bodies on complementary basis, providing those services to the state in conversion and adopting standard. I think that can be helpful in implementing this. That services will always be available, and our profession will be willing to do this social justice or this justice to the back to the society also. Only with two priority, if my interest cost goes by 100 basis points down because of this standardization, and my investment goes up by 20%, what is coming up in FII or FDI, I think we will serve the purpose more than the cost which we are going to incur for that. Thank you. Sorry for interruption.
We'll definitely take up this initiative with Srivastava sir, Jory sir and others. But when we meet certain government departments, they say that actually accrual is alien to us. We understand only cash basis. So first let us go to accrual, then we will think of standards and others. So maybe, but we have some shining exceptions, so we will definitely take up with them.
Sir, just wanted to add over here. It's important. Sir, last year I went and met almost all 20 state government. As of now, the accounting standards being governed by the state government. They didn't follow the MAM. They didn't follow the things. They had their own accounting standard governed by the government. Local government. Bihar has a separate. Most of the government has a separate accounting standard. When I talk about them, almost 20 states, to converse with the ICAI, they said our act doesn't permit. So my point, I met the government. I said that let's form a GST kind of council for the states in the Ministry of Mahua and be part of it, GASAB. If the GASAB can also be part of it, it can be steering it. They are seriously considering it. Sir, I request you, being a GASAB, to be part of the, ministry initiative. They wanted to highlight, but they always saying that article doesn't permit because that article is which part of the CAG, and we have found out the exception. How they can escape that article 140 and can form a committee and can take up the initiative rather than it's 18-year-old. That is for input to you. Yesterday, the minister Sham Dubey ji also there. They had 2 meetings to consider to come out some alternative view and impose the accounting standard to the all state governments and have a synchronized. So this is input, sir, to take forward. Now it's time MPV to take the lead for other speaker, and if you could do otherwise.
Sure. No, I'll just do a very brief introduction. Pleased to welcome Mr. Nalin Srivastava. He's currently the Deputy Control General of Accounts, specializing in development and evaluation of IT systems. He has worked as a resident auditor at UNIMID as at E1 Fasher, and his educational qualifications are quite enviable. In fact, in today's panel, I'm so inspired by the kind of strong academic credentials of all the panelists. He's a certified intern auditor from IIA Florida. He's a certified information systems auditor from ISACA, certified government audit professional from IIA, certified in risk and information control systems from ISACA, CISM, certified information securities manager from ISACA, and the most sought after now, the certified fraud examiner from ACFE USA. Besides this, he's a cost accountant and he's done his business MBA in finance and post-graduation diploma in industrial engineering, and also done a diploma in international public sector accounting standards from is certified in Chartered Institute of Public Finance and Accountancy, London, UK. So has also published 2 papers in international journals. With this and without much ado, I invite Nalin Srivastavaji to share his thoughts. Over to you, sir.
Okay. So, good evening to this very distinguished panel headed by Johri sir, and then we have Ved Jain sir and all those who have already spoken. So now it is on me basically to see where the government accounting standard, because we are the ones who are actually preparing accounts. So we have to respond to many of the issues which have been raised or which are being raised regarding the accounting standard and its role in promoting transparency. First of all, the issue regarding transparency, are we addressing that we don't have an accounting standard because we are not following accrual accounting, or we are looking at the accounting standard or accounting practices even in the system of cash basis of accounts? Now, when we are talking about the cash basis of accounting, the cash basis of accounting, we have to look into what exactly entails into the preparation of cash-based account. As the context has already been set, that the importance of accounting standard, role of accounts, the role of financial statements which government brings out, its role in overall dimension of public financial management cannot be overemphasized. In fact, the transparency in bringing out accounts is one of the most important requirement if a country's credibility as far as the financial management is concerned needs to be established. Then the financial reporting is one of the key aspects. Now, if we talk about government accounting practices as of now, we have very well defined government accounting rules, which are basically what are the standards? Standards are certain conventions and rules which are being followed for preparation of accounting statements. And we have been following these accounting rules and conventions consistently in bringing out our accounting statements, and those accounting statements go through the rigor of audit. And we try to resolve various types of audit observations which come. And if we look in the international context, we find that we are compliant to IMF's international data dissemination standards. We are bringing out our cash-based financial report on a regular basis. We are disseminating monthly data. And if we talk about improving credibility by going to accrual accounting, I don't know how far is it going to improve credibility, or how far is it going to, because even in the cash-based system, we can have that credibility built into the system. And if we talk about that government borrowings and all, the government borrowings predominantly is the market borrowings, is the internal borrowing. External borrowing is still, we have very limited external borrowing, and internal borrowing we are able to raise at a substantially lower rate, considering the sovereign guarantee which we have for the government bonds which we bring out. So in the context of overall financial reporting framework, we find that we have a very consistent and defined set of accounting principles which are being used in bringing out our financial reports, and which are being brought and published onto the website, and regularly being monitored by various stakeholders. Now, if we look into the international financial reporting standard, because if we talk about accounting standards and framing of accounting standard, there is no dearth of accounting standard as such. We have cash-based IPSAS, we have accrual IPSAS, which are ready to adopt accounting standards, and we can adopt those accounting standards and go ahead with preparation of our financial reports based on those standards. So accounting, maybe some customization may be required, but the broad framework is already available as far as the accounting standards are concerned. Now, if we talk about cash-based financial reporting, as Johri sir has said, we in CGA's office have also undertaken an exercise for doing that gap analysis. This is an in-house exercise for doing a gap analysis first with the cash-based IPSAS. And we are compliant to part 1, and even to some extent, to a large extent, even to the part 2 of the cash-based IPSAS. considering that IPSAS and all these frameworks are generic framework which tries to take care of requirements of various types of public sector entities, various layers of public sector organization. So considering that aspect, we have done that benchmarking exercise, and some of the provisions which are a little bit maybe more suited towards public sector, or maybe what we call government GBEs, government business entities, which in our parlance we call public sector units. They are more suited to that aspect, but otherwise we are largely compliant to that. Then if we look into the overall framework, we have consistent government accounting rules. Then we have got our list of major and minor heads, which set a framework in which the government accounts are prepared. And then we have various receipt and payment rules, civil accounts manual, which bring out the complete accounting structure and accounting framework within which the government financial reporting is done. And largely, if we look at the international disclosure norm, we are compliant to that. Now, if we talk about the IT system, use of IT system in making data available real time and enhancing the transparency in financial reporting, our IT systems are now spread across the length and the breadth of the country. And on one hand, we are trying to see that the accounting and the financial reporting is done on a real-time basis. As and when we are issuing any transaction, it immediately gets posted in our general ledger. And we can bring out our financial report on a daily basis. In fact, this year, because of this COVID crisis, every week we are sending a flash figure generated for expenditure and revenue data from our system to the finance ministry for taking informed decision. That what is the country's expenditure, what is the revenue collection, what is the total debt which is there. So all these transactions are being recorded as they are happening. We have got now the IT systems have slowly matured, and we have been able to leverage those IT systems on one hand to record the financial transactions, and on the other hand, even to look into the opaque part of the cash-based financial reporting, where as soon as the government releases of money, it is considered as spent as far as the cash-based account is concerned. But to track it down to the beneficiary when it actually moves out of the government account, we are tracking down to the lowest level where the fund moves to the actual beneficiary. Similarly, on the other side, we are also trying to implement this treasury single account system for autonomous bodies, wherein we would try to restrict the movement of funds from our central banker, which is the government account, holding the government account, to the autonomous body till the autonomous body actually requires that money, so that the float in the system is largely reduced, which is one of the main advantage which comes out of accrual system. Also, the other aspects of accrual system, like having a physical assets, tracking of physical assets, effective asset utilization, we are trying to develop some computerized system for tracking the assets, which is presently not there. In fact, if we draw one of the major lacuna, if we compare cash with the accrual, the monitoring and utilization of physical assets and its tracking is one of the major challenge which can be emphasized as far as the cash-based system is concerned. So we are trying to plug in that gap. So what I'm trying to say is that our IT system and the present basis of accounting, we have been largely able to cater to the requirements of various stakeholders. Now, it's not that the government has not taken any step as far as movement to accrual is concerned. We have also enhanced certain disclosures, like for liabilities, we publish each and every loan and when is it going to mature, what is its maturity date. All these things are brought out in our finance account and also accounts at a glance which we publish. Now, for going beyond further, we are trying to link all these systems through an IT-based platform so that at any point of time, I should be able to get an overall picture of the government financial reporting. Now, only thing is that at what point I am going to recognize my transaction, that's one area where whether we are, and all of us are practicing accountants, so we don't need to emphasize that what is the difference between the cash and accrual recording system. But we had also initiated some pilots to look into the aspect of whether the implementability of accrual-based system. And in fact, ICAI was the partner in that pilot. This happened way back in 2008-9. But it was very difficult to even write an accrual-based account for 2 CPWD divisions and RML hospital because of the certain assumptions and all those things which were involved. So I'm not saying that it's not doable, but it's a resource-hungry exercise, and we need to have a careful move. We need to have a careful consideration before actually moving towards the taking a big leap towards the accrual-based system. So I would like to summarize, because we can go on in this accounting system, and this debate can go on and on. But right now, I would like to summarize that we have a well-defined set of accounting principles which are being used, and which we can say that a kind of standard which we follow in bringing out our financial reports on cash basis. There is a considered view regarding accrual basis of accounting, though we may strive to do it, but then the cost and benefit would need to be seen, that what would be the cost of implementation and what would be the benefit coming out of it. So that still is being deliberated in the government before we finally take some leap towards it. But as far as other aspects of reform is concerned, we are already moving towards an accountability framework where output-outcome framework has been brought in. Then the distinction of plan and non-plan has gone. With that, we can have an integrated cost centers, which do not have these restrictions, so that we are able to give more flexibility to the implementing agencies in implementing programs of the government. Then we are trying to integrate various IT systems so that data moves seamlessly into the system, and we are able to get all the systems interacting in a proper manner to present financial information to executives for taking informed decisions. So I think with this, I would like to conclude, and then even at the panel discussion stage, I would be happy to answer some of the questions. But largely we would say that the government accounts, as we bring out, largely depicts true and fair picture of the government financial status as far as the government of India is concerned. There is always a scope for improvement. We strive towards that improvement. And obviously we would like to partner with everybody present here to do whatever we can. And in fact, just one point which I was missing, for this urban local bodies also, we are also trying to consider that we are able to get the accounts of all the three tiers of the government. Office of CNAG, I think Johari sir is himself compiling this combined finance and revenue accounts for union and states. So if we are able to have a kind of chart of account which extends to local bodies, and if we are able to have some uniformity in chart of account to all the 3 levels, at least the macro data for the general government, that itself would be a big achievement for the government of India, for the entire government setup as a whole, which we are trying to do. Even Sham Dubey sir from UD is pioneering that development, and Control General of Accounts is the chairman of that committee which is looking into this. So we are taking various multi-dimensional reforms to cater to these requirements, but still it's a long way to go, and it's a constant learning process where all of us can partner together to make a difference. Thank you.
Thank you, Nalin, for excellent, your thought process. We heard number of times you in the R certificate course also, you are also instrumental for, giving your valuable inputs and guiding force to the all chartered accountant in the various government functionings on the accounting standard in the certificate course. So thank you very much. Now I request MPB to take the lead for the heading and close this, entire session. So.
Thank you.
You are on mute.
Yeah. Thanks, Dheeraj. Mr. Henning, welcome to the panel today, and look forward to hearing from you. For the benefit of all the participants here, a quick introduction of Mr. Henning. Mr. Henning is the technical advisor to the UK member to IPSAS since January 2019. He's been nominated to the Consultative Committee of Accounting bodies, an umbrella group of chartered professional bodies of British qualified chartered accountants, which includes ICAEW, ACCA, CIPFA, ICAS, and Chartered Accountants Ireland. He's a technical manager specializing in public sector financial reporting in the financial reporting faculty at ICAEW, and his role includes preparation of draft comment letters in relation to both national and international public sector financial reporting issues with primary focus on IPSAS. He has over 10 years of technical accounting experience, and before joining ICAEW in 2015, he helped construct and implement the whole of government accounts consolidation process at the UK's Ministry of Finance, specializing in intra-governmental transactions and balances. And prior to that, he was with Barclays PLC, the group financial division, working in areas such as goodwill, credit risk, joint ventures, and associates. Academically, he is a fellow member of the ICAW and a graduate with a BA in economics. With this brief introduction, I once again welcome Mr. Hennings to address us with his thoughts. Over to you, Mr. Hennings.
Thank you very much for the kind introduction. And also thank you very much for inviting me to speak. It's a real privilege to take part, and I've been listening to this very distinguished panel with a lot of interest, and I recognise a lot of the issues raised, which is reassuring. And I'm also glad to say that I share one common experience with Mr. Jory, and that is that we were both, technical advisors to IPSAS. So that makes me feel good. So, for my introductory remarks, I will slightly cut it a bit short, just because I want to leave some time for some panel discussion questions at the end. But I will just take you through an overview of the UK's adoption of accruals accounting, some of the benefits that we have reaped, but then also some of the challenges that we've had to overcome. So, very briefly, I'll have to say this is before my time. So in 1994, a discussion paper was launched on the adoption of accruals accounting for the UK, and that cited three key benefits. And the first one is better management information. So that would entail to have a full picture of all the costs that can then be matched to outputs. More informed decision making by taking into account the opportunity cost of capital, and better, more complete information for formulating economic policy and for preparing national accounts, which are the statistical accounts. Then there were a few years of having a simultaneous system of using cash accounting and accruals accounting, primarily because the Parliament, they were quite sceptical in losing valuable information. So they'd only ever been used to cash accounting for years, for hundreds of years almost. And then suddenly, there was a little bit of fear with this accruals accounting whether information would be lost. So they implemented a dual system for quite a few years. But in the year 2000, the first cash account, the first accruals account was published. And then a year later, in 2001, the final cash account was published. And then a few years after that, in 2003-04, the UK then moved to full accruals budgeting. After that, they applied UK GAAP and were doing the accruals accounting. And then 10 years later after that, they decided to produce the whole of government accounts, which is then when I joined the Ministry of Finance in the year 2010, I was part of the first ever production of whole of government accounts. In terms of the accounting standards, the UK decided to adopt the International Financial Reporting Standards, IFRS, from 2009-10 onwards. The reasons are not that well documented, but I think, as was alluded by the panel, I think they wanted to ensure international outreach. So they wanted to have a more international framework rather than following UK GAAP. And that then coincided with the time as well when the EU mandated all listed companies to follow IFRS, and that was from the year 2005 onwards. So, given that the UK are basically following IFRS, the first problem really is that these standards are created specifically for the private sector. So they've had to create a kind of endorsement mechanism, if you like, to evaluate the standards that are pronounced by the IASB to ensure that they can be adopted for a public sector context. And they have created what is called the Financial Reporting Advisory Board to provide advice on that endorsement mechanism. And any changes that are proposed to the IFRS standards are then issued by the Ministry of Finance in the Financial Reporting Manual. And this then leads me on to the first issue, is that whilst there is a main financial reporting manual that is applicable to all central government entities, there are other reporting manuals. Well, there's one for the local authorities, and then there's another one for the hospitals. And these are actually created by other organisations, so not the Ministry of Finance. The problem is when you have different financial reporting manuals, it then leads to different outcomes when you are presenting your financial statements. And apart from having difficulties in consolidating them at the whole of government level, you also then get issues with comparability and usability. So if you are used to looking at private sector accounts, you will see that the local authority accounts are laid out very differently because they follow a different system. Then another point that I wanted to just highlight, and I know Mr. Jury alluded to that as well, is a difference between the accruals budgeting and the financial reporting. And basically, some of the transactions are just treated differently under the two systems, and that creates problems for parliamentary scrutiny, since they are not able to trace the budget, and it's the budget that the Parliament votes on to the final numbers reported in the annual report. So comparing the budget to reported outcomes was very difficult. So what actually took place then in 2012 was a project called the Clear Line of Sight, and that project reviewed the differences between budgeting and financial reporting, and they set about trying to minimize all those differences. When I say minimize, they weren't able to eliminate every last one, but they did try their best. But I think what I just want to say on this topic as well is that one of the problems remains is that you have budgeting remains a specialist task in its own right, and financial reporting is a specialist task in its own right. And the peoples still speak a different language, and it creates issues basically because when you're trying to align budgets to financial reporting, you need to have a certain degree of commonality. Then. Also, what I wanted to mention was that the Ministry of Finance has been working for quite some time now on a common chart of accounts, which could be the key to simplify many of the differences that currently exist. For me, I think the key would be to try and keep things as simple and understandable as possible, and not to the chart of accounts for every quirky transaction. And the chart of accounts should also form the basis for both financial reporting and budgeting. So, focusing more on the accounting standards, adopting accruals accounting has no doubt benefited the UK, and perhaps in ways that will never really truly be measurable. Having a complete picture of all assets and liabilities is key to managing public services effectively. The obvious one is public debt, but it goes much further than this. You see, the national accounts, so the statistical-based accounts, only focus on liquid assets and liabilities, and therefore the debt is much smaller because it only covers government borrowings. However, on an IFRS basis or on an accruals accounting basis, the liabilities are a lot larger. For example, in the UK, the biggest liability by far is the public sector pensions liability. So the whole of government accounts has allowed the government to review the pension liabilities in their entirety, which has led to some reforms, such as higher pension contributions by the civil service and less generous payouts. Pensions are no longer based on final salary, but on career average salaries. Also, the UK government, we have recently undertaken a thorough balance sheet review to determine whether assets are being employed in the most effective way and whether liabilities are being serviced in the least costly manner to the taxpayer. And this has already resulted in some changes. So, for example, there's been quite a lot of amalgamation of office space. So a lot of the civil service in the UK are based in London, and a lot of the buildings are in prime locations. And they've assessed the relative cost of capital, if you like, and they've decided to try, to amalgamate the office space as much as possible. And some buildings have been sold off. The UK has been producing comprehensive annual reports for quite a while now, and whilst the quality does vary, the number of qualified accounts by the auditors remains quite low. Maybe that might change this year with COVID, but we will see. But, in recent times, efforts have been made to improve the usefulness of the accounts by linking the entity's objectives to the financial statements. And whilst it could still be argued, that the accounts always look at things through slightly rose-tinted windows, they're always a bit too positive, the information provided is useful and, the government is held to account to a certain extent, and that is primarily via various committees. But this is one of the key points I want to make. I think, in my opinion, government accounts in general, they are not used enough for decision-making and scrutiny. I think, unlike the private sector, there is not enough demand and interest in the annual reports. Citizens don't really read them, and that includes the local government accounts as well, so in the area where they live. Ratings agencies show only a mild interest in general, and government bond investors are also not demanding more or better information. And I think this should be looked at more closely to determine whether the information provided in the public sector annual reports are really what people are looking for. For example, we've mentioned IPSAS a few times. I think IPSAS, have got some excellent public sector specific disclosures and accounts, which I think should be of more interest globally. But I think, just to finish, transparency really is hugely important to build trust and to maintain a social contract. So that I look at the social contract as a sort of civilized interaction between the government and its citizens, and I think that's one of the fundamental ways an efficient government can operate. And then it feeds into all the other things that were mentioned in terms of ratings agencies being able to borrow on the open capital markets cheaply. And I think that transparency is at the heart of it to build trust. And I think, on that one, I just was conscious of the time, so I'll just leave it there. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Henix. And in fact, it was very useful insights to us. What I would do is, for two reasons, given the fact that all of you have actually spoken so extensively, the questions which we actually listed for the panel discussion have been addressed by all of you in some form. And also the fact that we are a little behind schedule, I'll take the liberty of avoiding the panel discussion, but probably have a 30 seconds closing comments from each of you if you would like to share some thought which you feel you would like to share with the participants. Over to you, Mr. Johri, and we can come in the same order and conclude.
Yes, sure. I'll take 30 seconds only.
I'm so sorry.
Well, in accounting standards, there are four things which are important: the point of recognition, the manner of recognition, its presentation, and then disclosure. In fact, these four things are the heart of an accounting standard. And I think in government accounts, if you really see, we need to work on the presentation and the disclosure aspects quite a bit. And in my frank opinion, both assets and liabilities need much more analysis, In fact, if you ask me, liabilities, the extra budgetary borrowings which Government of India does, is to the tune of about 3 lakh crores. And if it is used for calculating their fiscal deficit things, it'll be far more than what it is. In fact, oil, fertilizer and food are the prime, and in fact all the government expenses and liabilities are in the books of the public sector enterprises. So that, we have to admit at some point of time, fixed assets, yes, fixed assets is a real cause of worry because we have never prepared a fixed assets register, So whatever assets we are creating, how well we are utilizing them is a question. And in fact, even in expenses and revenues, meaning the cutoff procedures which are so prominent in accrual system of accounting are not very strictly followed there. So I think to improve upon something, the first step is acceptance. And once we accept the ground realities, then perhaps we can all work towards improving. But if we are in the denial, then perhaps it will be very difficult to take a long step. So to all panelists, my request would be that perhaps we need to be seeing the things, trying to see the things as they are, and then try to see what can be done under the circumstances. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Pri.
And just one sentence to add. Accounting standard, as we say, the topic is the role of accounting standard in promoting transparency. I will say the role of accounting standard is the need of the hour for promoting Indian economy or economy of the government. As you said, and Mr. Johri has also said, there may be a cost, there may be some issues in transition. I believe it is worth investing in such cost because the economy is going to reap the benefit of this cost. And that's why I say need of the hour is that the government introduce accounting standard for promoting the Indian economy.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Srivastava.
Yeah. Okay. So I would say on this that we have some standard and we have some practices, though we may not say, I would say that we are not following accrual standards, or we are not having standards per se, which brings out in the format in which we see the standards to be, that there are 15, 16, 20 accounting standards. They are amalgamated somewhere in the accounting rules, and which has been further elaborated into accounting procedures which we bring out. And
right.
I accept that there is a need to further reform and go for further reforms. But then again, every system has its own pluses and minuses, and government is considering that. It's not that government is not aware of what would be the benefit or what would not be the benefit, and still government is not trying to do something about it, because we know that we have a very decisive government which is very quick in taking decisions. We all are aware of that. So in that context, I would say that we are to a certain extent, we are doing a kind of fair financial reporting, and there is always a scope for improvement, and we'll try to do as much as we can.
Thank you, Mr. Srivastava. Over to you, Hennings, for the closing comments, and I'll hand over back.
Yeah, I think my closing comment would be, I think the UK made a mistake really by not taking the decision makers and the politicians on the journey of the cash to accruals movement. And the problem is, in the UK, it's getting better now, but really the problem is it's become a little bit of a compliance exercise, and decisions are still not really grounded in accruals-based financial reporting. They're still looking at the national statistics for more timely data, but it is not as complete, it is not audited. So whilst the national accounts have a role to play, I think the financial statements and audited financial data is very important for decision making and scrutiny. And I think in the UK it's getting better, but they're still not there yet. So I think my message would be make sure that everybody's on the journey together and to reap the full benefits.
Thanks, Henning. I'd just like to share my closing comment. I would like to agree with Srivastava that the cash base of accounting is not a bad one. It has its fair amount of sound principles as well. But having said that, I'd just like to share the following, that we are the 6th largest GDP in the world. and by the close of the decade, we'll be the fourth largest GDP in the world. And with that kind of a status and with that global leading stature, India not being in accrual based and preparing a consolidated balance sheet probably will not augur well. Probably,
we have got this stature with cash-based accounting.
Yeah. So with accrual based, just imagine where it would be. And in fact, while all of us believe that there's so much of unaccounted liabilities, I also believe that for a country like ours, there is significant amount of assets also which are available. In fact, for countries like ours, which have plenty of natural resources, there is assets as well. And it will probably remove some of the confidence level issues. And it will bring in more risk capital into the country. And as our past President Vejjayanji said, once you have more risk capital coming in, your economy's size increases, lower cost of capital and more projects being taken up. I'm sure, as you mentioned, Srivatsava, we have a very decisive government, and I'm sure this decision will happen sooner than later. And I've seen the right decibels being sent by Mr. Jory on the need to acknowledge the issue and move forward. So thank you all for sharing your thoughts, giving your time, and for being a wonderful panel. It's my pleasure to have been here and listen to all of you. Thank you, Dheeraj, for the opportunity to be here. Over to you, Dheeraj bhai.
So thank you, MPV for steering and taking the command to be as a moderator. I think very well point being considered by the Bejan sir, and every people has enumerated that these are the issues are there. But the main issue which I feel in the last 2 years is that we have the state government, we have the central government, then we have the local bodies, different laws are there, and I think we need to have a some steering committee or coordination committee like GST, unless until we have such kind of procedure. And I feel very difficult. Next 10 years it could be succeed. And I'm from last 2 years I'm heading it, and I request Jory sir, let's come out, with the state government. Unless until we have the hands glove with the state government, nothing going to move up, because every state government has a different overriding provision, overriding laws, overriding statute, overriding, accounting standards. That's difficult to, the central body, accounting body or auditor body to make in the transparency. That is my, enablement. Now I hand over this to the CV Chitle sir for closing and vote of thanks for each and everyone.
Well, thank you, Chairman. As you know that Bhagavad Gita has given principles of life in a condensed manner, but every commentary in Bhagavad Gita is much more in volume than Bhagavad Gita itself. So these gentlemen have poured in such a knowledge about this accounting standards and the transparency that if I start commenting upon that, I will exceed the length. So sufficient would it be to say that, gentlemen, you have created the brand, 3,000 odd brand ambassadors, all those who are attending this particular seminar in an affirmative manner that yes, accounting standards do play a role in promoting transparency, not only with the government, but any other organization. And definitely it is for us to take up with government at all the levels and ensure that in the interest of standardization, comparability, benchmarking, and all other advantages that you have talked of about this transparency and accounting standards, we will definitely take it forward. As far as accrual basis is concerned, there is generally unanimity. But again, MPV, you will appreciate that as far as things like construction is concerned, again, we are coming back to cash basis. So still there is some trade-off here and there. Whatever it be, ultimately in accrual basis, we measure our assets, and more particularly in other sessions we have seen the liabilities, and particularly the liabilities like gratuity and others which are today not reflected. So they will definitely enable us to appreciate how we have performed during the year, over the decade and over the years. So we have been very fortunate to have with us the keynote speaker, Sri R.M. Jory, Director General, C&AG. Thank you, sir, for being with us and giving wonderful keynote address and being with us for throughout the session. We had the panelist, Mr. Vejjayan, C.A. Vejjayan, our past president, Nalin Kumar Srivastav, Deputy CAG, and Henning from Public Sector Financial Reporting, ACAEW. You have done justice within the allotted time to the topic, and definitely you have brought out different facets of this particular subject. And thank you, MPV, for the kickstart with your opening remarks. Thanks are also due to Chairman and our office team, Namrata and Nikita, for their wonderful work in organizing this entire webinar for 3 days. As you know that in the first day, we had address from Mr. Murmu, who is the CAG, and then each day we had new highs as far as the seminar is concerned. The first day we were partnered by the Australian professionals. In the second day it was from Singapore, and today we had partners from United Kingdom. I am sure that this particular initiative will continue in years to come. Maybe today we are on government and public accounting. Tomorrow it may be on any other topic as well. So thank you for everybody for joining and making this webinar a grand success. With this, I sign off and close this global webinar, 3-day global webinar organized by our government and public finance and accounts committee led by Vadi Chairman Dheeraj Khandelwal. Dhanyawad.
Thank you all. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you to all. Thank you, Bejan sir. Thank you, Rajori sir, MPB.
Recording has stopped.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.